Warning, bus chassis damaged. Damage level, 1%. Warning, bus chassis damaged. Damage level, 3%. Warning, mechanical arm damaged. Damage level, 6%. The seed's warning alerts kept ringing in my head, cold and urgent. Despite the pain of seeing the damage, I could tell the broodmother was nearly at the end of its rope. Through the seed's panoramic vision, I observed the base vehicle from every angle. The mechanical arms, synchronized with my barrage of bullets, had nearly bored through the broodmother's body, leaving a massive, bloody hole, a fatal wound that had ground its internal organs into mush. Special blood detected. Can be used to improve soil in the mutant plant research lab. Blood, flesh, and bone detected. Can be used to improve soil in the mutant plant research lab. Level 2 plus special energy wave detected. Absorbing now. The electronic notification chimed, carrying a rare hint of excitement. Even though the voice was as cold as ever, I couldn't help but let the corners of my mouth curl up. I had waited so long just to get my hands on these. It turned out that the broodmother's entire body, blood, flesh, and bone, could be used to enrich the soil for my research lab. I had been struggling with this hidden project for a while. Since the seed provided almost no hints about specific functions, I had to figure everything out step by step. I had already grown some powerful mutant brambles and stabilized seed production, but I still lacked the right soil for other mutant species. Who would have thought the broodmother's remains would be the perfect material for soil modification? This was a pleasant surprise, especially since this was just the scan result while it was still clinging to life. Right then, the broodmother seemed to sense the shadow of death and suddenly whipped its head around. Its hollowed-out eye socket seemed to stare right at me, sending a chill down my spine and a surge of unease through my heart. "Jiang, watch out!" Rin Shiyu screamed in panic. A massive shadow suddenly loomed over the roof. A tail, 7 or 8 meters long and covered in sharp spikes, slammed down toward the combat room with savage force. The attack was so sudden I didn't have time to react. Just then, there was a loud thud as someone leaped onto the combat room. It was Tang Chongfei. "Zhang Li, I owe you my life. I'm leaving this level 5 mission to you. I'll hold it off. Kill it now." He let out a furious roar. I knew that because I had saved him before, he was determined to settle the debt, even if he hated being beholden to anyone. Tang Chongfei was covered in dried blood, looking like a demon crawling out of hell. His body was riddled with wounds, and blood wouldn't stop flowing. Yet, he stood his ground, straining to block the broodmother's horrific strike. In that moment, my perception of Tang Chongfei completely changed. I realized he was a truly straightforward and gritty man. After glancing at him for a split second, I made my move. An air cannon slowly emerged from the front of the bus. Air cannon. Boom. A heavy explosion rang out as a blast of compressed air tore straight into the wound in the broodmother's eye. It let out a pathetic wail, its massive body filled with air, swelling up before being ruthlessly punctured. Other parts of its body began to explode one after another, spraying flesh and blood everywhere. As the broodmother finally died, I felt a powerful surge of electricity course through my body. In the mental vision shared by Ren Shiyu, the blood fungus covering the ground quickly withered, and its spiritual energy vanished completely. Meanwhile, on the other battlefield, the clash between the Haishui organization and the remaining teams had turned into a bloodbath. Over a dozen heavy trucks were destroyed by the mutant beast tide, bursting into flames and exploding. The level 2 mutant beasts were nearly invincible. Only 2 were taken down after being hit by concentrated fire multiple times. Another was heavily wounded, but it cost the lives of 2 paranormals. By now, the convoy's weapons and ammunition were nearly exhausted. If not for the timely reinforcement from Haishui and the Doomsday Tramps, the entire front would have likely collapsed. Even so, the bodies of survivors littered the ground. Many paranormals were forced into melee combat after the vehicle barricade was breached. People fell one after another. Even Ho Dinkuan had his stomach gored open by a mutant water buffalo. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Su Kuan and Zhang Hai used their gull shotguns to finally push back that level 2 mutant beast. Suddenly, the level 2 mutant beasts hunting the warriors froze for a few seconds. They had sensed the broodmother's death. With their limited intelligence, They understood that the blood and energy they once drew from her were gone. Instinct told them not to keep fighting someone capable of killing her. Immediately, the level 2 beasts abandoned the survivors and scattered in a panic. The other beasts didn't retreat immediately, but their threat level dropped significantly. At this point, Tang Changyang was able to send men to help Tang Chongfei, who had just fallen off the bus roof, to his feet. Haha, looks like my life is tougher than yours this time. Tang Chongfei laughed loudly, despite being covered in wounds with hardly a patch of uninjured skin left. As he passed the broodmother's corpse, he spat on it, looking as fierce as ever. This experience was worth it. It's been a long time since I felt the threat of death so clearly. Tang Chongfei muttered, then suddenly looked up at the bus with a complex expression. That vehicle is just too powerful. He had heard Tang Changyang mention that I was an old paranormal specializing in mechanical modification, and this bus was both my masterpiece and my weapon. Brother, this broodmother. Tang Changyang walked up to Tang Chongfei, glanced at the corpse, and asked in a low voice. Tang Chongfei knew exactly what his brother was thinking. He paused for a moment and said bluntly, "Let him have it. I lost." Previously, Tang Chongfei had claimed I wasn't qualified to compete with him. But now, I was the one who held the upper hand, personally killing the broodmother and even saving his life. As for the broodmother's remains, Tang Chongfei had lost all interest in claiming them. But Tang Changyang seemed a bit flustered. This was the result of so much effort, paid for with many lives. They should at least get a share of the credit, especially since his brother was seriously injured. No buts. If you want it, go talk to him yourself. Tang Chongfei sneered, glancing at Tang Changyang. Even though he was heavily wounded, his aura was still like a fierce tiger, making Tang Changyang shiver and shut his mouth. I saw his hesitation clearly, but since Tang Chongfei had no intention of interfering, Tang Changyang didn't dare open his mouth to demand anything. In his heart, he could only curse bitterly. You really hit the jackpot, didn't you? By then, I had stepped off the bus. Around us, the broodmother's flesh and blood were slowly disappearing. Amidst the post-battle chaos, no one noticed the particle beams silently gathering materials. I only left the massive carcass untouched for now, because if it vanished right in front of everyone, it would be impossible to explain. Haha, Jiang, the level 5 clearing mission is complete. Zhiliang jumped for joy, grinning from ear to ear. The members of the function team were also incredibly excited. A level 5 clearing mission meant the rewards would be massive. I also let out a sigh of relief. My main goal in risking everything to kill the broodmother was to finish this mission. By collaborating with the Doomsday Tramps this time, I was guaranteed a large share of the credit. Furthermore, this mission was enough to bump my Shuriing team up to an A rank in the government's evaluation. The members of the Lin Feng team stood around, looking at me with eyes full of admiration. In the post-apocalyptic world, the strong are always respected, and I clearly wasn't just ordinarily strong. Just then, a stretcher was carried over. On it lay a man drenched in blood. "Captain Jiang, thank you." Ho Dingkuan lay on the stretcher, his voice weak. His stomach had been gored by a beast. If he weren't a paranormal, he would have been dead long ago. Even so, he insisted on coming to thank me. Without me, his gamble this time would have been a total failure. In Ho Dingkuan's eyes, I saw genuine gratitude and respect. He had witnessed the power of the bus firsthand and understood he shouldn't hesitate anymore about staying on my side. "Your team is so strong, yet you were ranked C at first. That's hilarious. Thanks to you, we're getting a piece of the glory too." Haha. Ho Dingkuan laughed until he was out of breath, which made his stomach wound sting, his face contorting between a smile and a wince. In reality, the Doomsday Tramps had made a huge sacrifice. While Tang Chongfei and I were facing the broodmother, they and the Haishui organization had to hold off over 20 level 2 mutant beasts and countless level 1s. Without them, I couldn't have finished this mission alone. "Captain Ho, don't move too much. I have a doctor here. Let me help you with those wounds first," I said with a smile. Even though the level 5 mission was done and I'd reached my goal, I was genuinely satisfied with this partnership. Ho Dingkuan was sensible and understood the situation. I valued partners like him. As long as I stayed in the Haiyuan safe zone, maintaining good relations with local organizations like the Doomsday Tramps was essential. Li Yusin was already standing behind me. She stepped forward, giving me a gentle look. Then she turned to Ho Dinkoen and said, "Let's find a quieter spot. I'll treat you right away." Even though the brood mother was dead, for the Doomsday Tramps, Hai Shui, and the Wanshur Alliance, it was a costly victory. The losses were staggering. In terms of manpower, the three organizations barely held on, but they still lost nearly 40 paranormals and about 100 elite soldiers. As for weapons and heavy trucks, the losses were even more heartbreaking. Continuous firing had severely damaged the guns, ammunition was depleted, and 13 heavy trucks were completely destroyed. After the inventory was finished, Ho Dinkoen and the others could only suffer the pain in silence. Finally, all teams were ordered to camp on site to collect and process the mutant beast carcasses. Everything proceeded orderly, but no one harvested more than I did. By the rules, since I dealt the killing blow to the brood mother, its entire corpse belonged to me. No one fought me for it, as military intel had already stated the broodmother's flesh was extremely peculiar. Its structure was complex. Though the muscle tissue contained energy, it was inedible and even toxic to humans. Even the military had only collected it for research and display in the past. Zhang Hai and Su Kuan used knives to help dismantle it for a while others didn't dare get close. The meat chunks they carved out were immediately pulled into the bus's storage bay by the mechanical arms. Since it was in a blind spot, no one noticed the meat disappearing strangely. Jiang. Quickly, Zhang Hai brought over a bright red, transparent crystal. Level 2 plus mutant core detected. 7 level 1 mutant cores detected. 7 level 1 cores? I paused as the seed's notification rang in my head. Where did these come from? I asked. One was found near the heart, and the others were in the stomach. Zhang Hai replied confidently. The stomach acid had already burned deep holes into the ground, and all the level 1 cores were pulled from there. What a glutton, I laughed. Clearly, this brood mother had swallowed quite a few level 1 mutant beasts. If it had been allowed to grow, even level 2 beasts wouldn't have escaped. With its ability to control beasts using blood fungus, hunting a few mutants was nothing for it. The fact that these high-purity energy cores were still in its stomach proved it had been eating a lot. Even though these level 1 cores were partially digested and had lower energy than usual, it was still a significant haul that left me satisfied. Right after, another notification from the seed came through. 1.2 kilograms of active biometal detected. Activating Level 1 Military Factory System Evolution Project. Notice: activating the military factory system requires upgrading the base vehicle to Level 1. Currently, at Level 0. Requirements: 2 Level 2 mutant cores, engine system upgrade, and rare metals. A flood of information filled my mind. When I saw a Level 1 military factory system, my heart skipped a beat. This thing is incredible. I remembered clearly that my sister, Jiang Zhuiying, once had to trade 5 tons of mutant meat just for one special alloy sword. If I could manufacture things myself, the resources I'd save would be astronomical. But when I looked at the upgrade requirements, my excitement quickly cooled. It was going to be tough. I could manage the engine upgrade with cores and other resources. But the base vehicle wasn't even level 1 yet, let alone having 2 level 2 mutant cores. Those only exist in level 2 mutant zombies. To get them, I'd have to kill 2 of them. That was no small feat. Level 2 mutant zombies are smarter than beasts. They're hard to find and even harder to kill. Just taking down one level 2 mutant beast today had taken everything I had. I had initially hoped this brood mother was level 3, but it turned out to be only level 2 plus, lower than expected. Thinking back, it made sense. The mutant pufferfish I killed in Xinwu County was also level 2 plus, and it was terrifyingly strong. If I had faced a real level 3 mutant beast today, the situation would have been far more catastrophic. Just then, another unexpected notification rang out. Special life energy detected. Can be merged with the mutant queen ant egg. I immediately noticed a strange, pale red energy mass appear in the storage bay. And the mutant queen ant egg immediately started reacting violently, shaking nonstop. Special life energy. This must be the essence of the brood mother. The brood mother itself was a bizarre fusion creature, with biological traits mixed from insects, birds, and beasts. I thought to myself, this is the most important thing I've gained today. Merge it. I want to see with my own eyes what kind of thing will be born after the fusion. A newborn monster won't be powerful right away. Even if it's dangerous, I can keep it under control. The pale red energy mass dove straight into the mutant queen ant egg. Through the seed's panoramic vision, the egg began to glow brilliantly. It throbbed violently like a beating heart, swelling and bouncing. The hard shell gradually softened, and a pale red mist began to spread. Warning: storage bay temperature rising. Cooling system has reached its limit. The warning sound made me frown. There was still a lot of mutant meat and important supplies in the storage. Thanks to the cooling and sterilization systems, they had been well preserved. But now, the thin layer of frost on the outside was melting. If this continued, the medicine and even the ammunition would be ruined. Clearly, the pale red mist from the mutant queen ant egg was emitting extreme heat. No, I have to get this thing out of here now. I knew very well that if I didn't move it quickly, something big would go wrong. Losing the mutant meat was one thing. I had enough cores to sustain myself, but if the medicine and rare metals were damaged, it would be a huge headache. Moreover, if the temperature kept rising, the storage bay could turn into a powder keg. Everyone, get back! I immediately shouted a warning. Li Yusin and the others didn't understand what was happening, but they quickly obeyed and retreated behind the bus. Once everyone was at a safe distance, a giant egg resembling a dark red heart appeared on the metal floor. The shell was nearly transparent, and you could see something squirming inside, constantly absorbing nutrients while the pale red mist made the surrounding temperature skyrocket. Seed, scan the mutant queen ant egg, I ordered in my mind, my hand already on my weapon. If anything dangerous happened, I would destroy it instantly. Energy too high, unable to scan. The seed's reply left me helpless. It was the same result as the last time I tried to scan the egg. Just then, a small white blur flashed past me. The white blur had large, drooping arms that suddenly stiffened as it leaped into the air. It traced a perfect arc and landed right on the mutant queen ant egg. The moment the pale red mist touched it, its fur caught fire, but the little creature didn't care. It opened its mouth wide, revealing 2 rows of white teeth and dripping saliva. Luoluo. I stared in shock, having no idea when it had snuck out. Damn it, is it planning to eat the mutant queen ant egg? I remembered clearly that the first time I saw Luoluo, it had snuck into a giant worm nest to steal eggs. This creature is a glutton to the extreme, and to it, the mutant queen ant egg was clearly a gourmet delicacy. By the time I rushed over, Luoluo had already bitten through the egg's fragile shell. The liquid inside immediately spilled out, and it stuck its butt in the air, wagging its little puffball tail as it shoved its head inside. Damn it, I really couldn't take it anymore. I could let other things slide, but that egg had just absorbed special life energy. I absolutely couldn't let it be eaten. Even though Luoluo was small, its head was buried so deep in the egg it looked like it had taken root. I grabbed its legs and pulled hard, but only came away with a clump of singed fur. I pulled again, and with a pop, Luoluo's mouth stretched wide like a basketball. It was chewing furiously, looking just like a hamster. With a loud gulp, everything in its mouth went straight down into its belly. Then, it looked at me with its big, innocent, round eyes. My throat went dry. No way. I quickly knelt down to check the egg. It was completely empty. I really lost it. Spare the rod for 3 days, and you're already climbing the roof. Spit it out now. If you don't, I'm stewing you in soy sauce. You know how good Zero is at cooking. I grabbed Luoluo's large arms and shook it up and down, hoping to dislodge whatever was in its stomach. Luoluo dangled in my hands like a giant, fluffy ball. Inside the bus, Zero twirled a knife in her hand, watching the scene with an expressionless face. Just then, Luoluo opened its mouth and let out a massive burp, which made me so angry I almost went crazy. Life really is a roller coaster. Clearly, it had swallowed everything. There was nothing I could do. I glared at Luoluo, thinking to myself that this time, I was definitely stewing it. This thing does nothing but eat and sleep, and occasionally acts cute. Now it had swallowed the egg I had so much hope for. Who knows, that thing could have grown into a monster as strong as the brood mother. Jiang, wait. Rin Shiyu spoke up quickly. Luoluo's mental state is changing. It's becoming very intense. Through the mental vision she shared, I saw clearly that the luo-luo in my hands had turned into a blazing ball of fire. The mental intensity was so strong it usually only appeared in level 2 mutant beasts. Before I could react, luo-luo closed its eyes, looking exhausted. Its singed fur automatically fell off, and new fur quickly grew in. I immediately set it down on the ground. Once released, luo-luo grew many long, soft strands of fur. Looking closely, they seemed to emit a strange light. Before long, thousands of these strands covered its entire body. It turned luo-luo into a giant fur ball the size of a wash basin, with a heavy, rhythmic thumping coming from inside like a heartbeat. How did this creature turn into this? Li Yusin and the others looked at me in shock. I explained with a headache. The egg absorbed special life energy, and then luo-luo ate it all. Li Yusin stepped up, placed her hand on the fur ball, and whispered, "Luo-luo seems fine. It looks like it's evolving." Evolving? I thought about it carefully. If it really was evolving, luo-luo would definitely change. Plus, since it swallowed the special life energy, it might be safer than letting the egg hatch. After all, luo-luo wasn't aggressive and got along well with everyone. Thinking of it that way, maybe this was a good thing. Regardless, if the egg had hatched into a monster, I wouldn't have known how to handle it other than doing some basic research and handing it over to the military. The base vehicle didn't have any facilities for keeping dangerous creatures yet. After a few hours of rest, everyone's tense nerves finally relaxed. The bodies scattered across the battlefield were gathered and burned to ash in a massive bonfire. As for the ground, once the blood fungus dried up, it revealed parched, cracked earth. In the distance, patches of red soil were frozen and shattered everywhere. "Jiang, the chairman told me to bring this over." A heavy truck stopped next to the bus. Zhiliang was driving, with Xiaoqi sitting next to him. The two of them had clearly grown close lately, even calling each other brother. 10 level 1 mutant cores, 1 level 2 mutant core, and 16 tons of mutant meat. "Check it out," Zhiliang said. I shook my head, thought for a moment, and replied, "No need to check. But can you negotiate something with your chairman? I don't need the mutant meat anymore. Trade it for 2 more level 1 cores, and then combine those to give me another level 2 core instead. The base vehicle is in an upgrade phase. I'm going to need more and more level 2 cores from now on. As for level 1 cores, besides making evolution crystals and upgrading minor parts, they weren't very useful anymore. In the long run, what I really needed were level 2 mutant cores. I'll tell the chairman," Zhiliang nodded. Not long after, the truck returned. Zhiliang leaned out and smiled. "Jiang, our chairman is only taking the 16 tons of meat. He's giving you the level 2 core." I smiled. This was exactly why I wanted a long-term partnership with Hodinkuen. Counting the level 2 plus core I just got, and the level 2 plus energy I absorbed earlier, I now had 2 more level 2 mutant cores, completing the most important requirement for the base vehicle upgrade. Now I'm just missing a few rare metals. These are usually used in aircraft, and in this post-apocalyptic world. Even though plane wreckage might seem common, finding one intact enough for me to salvage isn't easy. Still, at least I have a lead now. I'm not just driving around blindly anymore. I did the math. With the rewards from the 2 previous level 3 clearing missions, I had about 30 level 1 mutant cores. That was enough to comfortably make evolution crystals. As for level 2 cores, I now had 5, not counting that level 2 plus 1. Thinking about the haul from this trip, my mood lightened considerably. Suddenly, the bus's radio crackled to life. Special military broadcast. Commander Peng Tinglong and Vice Commander Li Yinchang have issued an emergency summons for the entire battlefield. All teams in the Beast Nest area must immediately gather at the central zone. From this moment on, any team leaving the Beast Nest area without authorization will be dealt with under military law. The gathering point will be announced shortly. An emergency summons? I frowned. At the same time, I heard cursing from the surrounding trucks. Clearly, the other teams had received the notice too. Soon after, I heard the heavy thrum of engines from above. Through the windshield, I saw an armed helicopter approaching from the southeast. Soldiers in camouflage gear were on board, fully armed, their eyes scanning the ground warily. The helicopter flew in a wide patrol arc. Its purpose wasn't hard to guess. This was a clear show of force by the military. It was meant to stop teams from fleeing the Beast Nest area after the order was issued. So, what exactly happened in the center of the beast nest? Thinking of this, my expression darkened. I remembered clearly that not long ago, the military commander in charge of the central attack had been replaced, and that change felt very unusual. No matter how much resentment or suspicion each team felt, all survivor groups and major organizations were forced to follow the military's unified command. Everything would have to wait until we reached the assembly point. After a brief rest, organizations like the Doomsday Tramps quickly headed for the assembly point announced on the radio. The assembly point was a small town near Song City, a place that had probably never been this crowded before the apocalypse. Survivor teams from all over the safe zones were pouring in. The central square and the northern part of town had been occupied by the military, with heavy tanks covered in blood and grime. With dark gun barrels, battle-hardened soldiers, and many wounded survivors, the whole place was thick with the smell of blood in the winter night. What's this emergency meeting for? Did something happen? My team's mission isn't even done yet. Who knows? The newly arrived teams whispered incessantly, anxiety clear on every face. An emergency summons was never a good sign. Sitting in the bus, looking at the scene outside, I couldn't help but feel moved. The Haiyuan safe zone was truly massive. The number of teams participating in the clearing mission was far beyond my imagination. The teams brave enough to join these missions were naturally not weak. Some even looked on par with the elites of the Doomsday Tramps or the Haishui organization. It turned out not all talented people joined big organizations. There were others like me who weren't interested in group cooperation. Just then, a convoy appeared behind the Doomsday Tramps that caught everyone's attention. Calling it cool wouldn't be an understatement. They were all heavy trucks that had been thoroughly modified, not just basic steel reinforcement or engine swaps. The bodies were fully armored with firing ports and observation hatches. On the front, they had welded fierce beast horns, each at least half a meter long. Mutant beast horns are much harder than steel. It wasn't rare for military trucks to be punctured by them. Only vehicles made of special alloys like mine would dare to ram straight into a beast and come out on top. Each vehicle flew a flag with a fierce tiger. Through the firing ports, I saw cold, calm eyes. Judging by the fresh dents and wet blood on the trucks, they had just come from a battle not long ago. Yet, aside from the sound of tires on the road, the entire convoy was eerily silent. This was definitely an elite team. The feeling they gave me was even stronger than when I first met the Haishui organization. Back then, the people I saw were the elites who followed Tang Chongfei through life and death. But this time, Haishui had mobilized almost their entire force, so the quality was uneven, understandable for a large organization. This team was different. They felt more dangerous than even Haishui's best. That's the Tiger Society. A member of the Doomsday Tramps on the next truck exclaimed. Whispers quickly spread. The survivors from the Xiangwu military base are here too. Even Haishu, it doesn't dare act tough in front of them. Seeing them is better than hearing about them, but their recruitment is brutal. They only care about quality. Tiger Society, Xiangwu military base. I immediately remembered Commander Peng. He also came from Xiangwu. The Haiyuan safe zone was vast, made up of 3 regions, and Xiangwu was one of them. It seemed both the military and the survivor teams from that region were very powerful. Zhiliang came to the door and asked if I wanted to set up camp with them outside town. They were going to cook and play cards for fun. I declined. The level 5 mission was over, and I'd reached my goal. There was no need to keep acting together. Zhiliang made a few disappointed jokes and even bragged about his card skills, but I just told him I didn't play. For me, having the bus was enough. I drove around the edge of town, found an empty spot behind a house, and stopped. The town center was under military control. Getting closer wouldn't solve anything. Everyone, get some rest. I have some things to take care of. Once the vehicle was settled, I sat in the driver's seat and sealed the cockpit. As the door closed, it felt like entering a completely different world. The noise outside was blocked out, leaving only the sound of my own breathing. Seed, I called out in my mind. Open the control panel. The familiar beep sounded. In this apocalypse, no sound made me feel more secure than that mechanical voice. It was the seed that helped the base vehicle and myself constantly evolve, giving me the power to defeat Tang Chongfei and face the Broodmother. I navigated the panel, and the image of the mutant plant research lab appeared. The space looked like a high-tech biolab mixed with a state-of-the-art greenhouse. Mechanical arms were skillfully mixing the soil made from the broodmother's blood and bone into the original black earth. The soil layer thickened visibly before my eyes, eventually reaching half a meter deep. The entire space was filled with the smell of fertile earth mixed with a hint of iron. Beep. Mutant plant soil modification successful. Active metal elements and mutant energy are now sufficient. From now on, the host only needs to continue adding mutant energy to maintain the soil's nutrients. The seed's reminder rang out, making me let out a soft breath. It felt like all that effort had finally paid off. At this point, the mutant saplings that had been moved aside were planted into the new soil one by one. Nutrient-rich environment confirmed. Growth process of mutant fuel plants accelerated. Nutrient-rich environment confirmed. Growth conditions for mutant cotton plants stabilized. Seed production rate for mutant brambles accelerated. The seeds' notifications came in rapid succession. Before me, the vibrant green and golden mutant plants were settling in. The 4 plants I had the highest hopes for, chosen to evolve toward producing fuel fruit, were all thriving. Right before my eyes, small, oily, emerald green leaves began to sprout. Even the mutant cotton plant, which had been unstable before, seemed to have been revitalized. I was overjoyed, even though I didn't know the final use for the mutant cotton yet. The mutant fuel plants were my own choice for evolution. Once I could mass produce them, I'd have fruit that could be used directly as fuel. In the apocalypse, diesel and gasoline were getting scarcer. I was literally growing fuel. If others found out, they'd be green with envy. The accelerated seed production for the mutant brambles was another piece of good news. I had used up all those seeds in the battle with the broodmother, and their effectiveness was undeniable. My mood was so high I could understand how old farmers felt standing before a field of heavy grain before the apocalypse. I was happy in that same way. Inside the mutant plant research lab, I picked up the cage sitting behind the passenger seat. Zhanghai had made this cage by twisting scrap steel he found on the road. Inside was a large ball of fur. Luoluo was a living creature, after all. I couldn't put it in storage, so keeping it here made it easy for Rin Xiu to keep an eye on it. Since swallowing the mutant queen ant egg, Luoluo had been in a deep sleep, very much like Jiang Zhuing's current state. Looking at that ball of fur, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. People used to keep cats and dogs. Now I was raising a mutant beast. What's the status of the base vehicle? I asked. Vehicle type, base vehicle. Standard version. 3 forms, medium bus, mining truck, water-based ship. Space configuration, bedroom, level 1 upgrade. X1, bathroom X1, small living room X1, combat room, level 2. X1, storage bay, level 2. Weapons, primary compressed air cannon, primary ram, primary fuel flamethrower. Functional equipment, energy crystal extraction lab, mutant plant research lab. Primary mechanical arms, onboard radio, automatic particle beam collection function. Chassis, level 2 special alloy. Evolution path, upgrade ram, upgrade flamethrower, upgrade biolab. Construct level 1 military factory, upgrade base vehicle. Looking at the specs on the panel, I couldn't help but be impressed. Compared to the first scan, it was the difference between a basic model and a luxury one. The base vehicle now had 3 forms. It just couldn't fly yet. Thinking about that mutant bird that appeared near the Haiyuan safe zone, I didn't dare plan for flight just yet. Current status, bus body damage 21%, mechanical arms 10%, tires 5%, ram 17%, combat room 30%. Proceed with repairs? The seed's reminder startled me. All this damage was from the fight with the broodmother. I didn't feel it much when the warnings were popping up during the battle. But seeing the total now was terrifying. If the broodmother had been any stronger, the base vehicle might have been half destroyed. Next time I see a monster like that, I'd better stay away. Confirm repairs, I said with a wry smile. Repairs in progress. Time remaining, 67 minutes. Functions will not be affected during repairs. I stared at the evolution projects for a long while, frustrated to realize that even though I had plenty of cores, the things I wanted to upgrade were always missing one thing or another. It felt like finally saving enough for a house only to be hit with restrictions. It was truly annoying. Might as well make a few evolution crystals. I put in the 7 level 1 mutant cores I got from the broodmother. They weren't strong enough for the base vehicle, but they were perfect for evolution crystals. Stepping out of the cockpit, I saw Rin Xiu and the others had started cooking, while Zhang Hai and Su Kuan had gone out to scout the area. The town was packed with survivor teams. Those two couldn't sit still. Li Yusin was sitting by the bed, watching Jiang Zhuiying, who was still asleep. Is Zhuiying the same? I asked. Li Yusin nodded and quietly made room for me. She knew I had to check on my sister every night before resting. I sat down. Jiang Zhuiying was sleeping soundly, her breathing steady. Her skin was fair and rosy. Without her usual mischievousness, she looked like a normal, gentle girl. Only by scanning her with the seed did I know the terrifying power sleeping within her body. I've finished the level 5 clearing mission. I'll take you to the hospital once we get back. I gently stroked her forehead, brushed back a stray hair, and whispered. Jiang Zhuiying remained still, but the slight warmth from her forehead helped settle my heart for a moment. Jiang, someone from the Haishui organization is looking for you. Zero suddenly walked in and said. She had been sitting on the roof on lookout duty. Haishui is looking for me. I was a bit surprised. I didn't know what they wanted. Stepping off the bus, I saw Tang Chanyang waiting outside. His expression was a bit stiff, and his eyes were uneasy when he looked at me. Captain Jiang, my brother would like to invite you over for a moment. Finally, Tang Chanyang forced a smile. We had a major confrontation before, and he even planned to take revenge. But unexpectedly, that incident was what caught Li Yinchang's attention. Now, with his brother Tang Chongfei's invitation and the strength I had shown, Tang Chanyang had completely given up on opposing me. In fact, he was even a bit intimidated. Your brother? I thought for a second and nodded. Lead the way. Jiang, I'm coming with you. Zero stepped forward. Me too. I haven't moved around in a while. Rin Xiu followed them off the bus. Think of it as a little walk. I didn't like Tang Chanyang, but I had a decent impression of Tang Chongfei. At least he was straightforward. Like the Doomsday Tramps, the Haishui convoy was parked on the outskirts of town. At night, the trucks were lined up like a windbreak. Bonfires crackled, and the smell of mutant meat wafted through the air. Tang Chongfei's heavy truck was at the center of the formation. I walked over this time, a handgun at my hip and a rifle on my back, with only Zero and Rin Xiu following me. Zero was small, and Rin Xiu was wrapped in a thick coat, scarf, and gloves, looking quite frail. Bringing two girls along like this, I didn't look threatening at all. But the Haishui members sitting around the fires went silent the moment they saw me, their eyes following my every step. What are you looking at? Just eat. Tang Chanyang barked at them. He clearly felt this whole situation was embarrassing. All right, Captain Jiang, please step inside. Tang Chanyang led me to the truck. Before I even entered, the thick smell of blood hit me. Even Rin Xiu frowned slightly and gave me a nod. Once inside, I was surprised by Tang Chongfei's sheer vitality. His body had been punctured by the broodmother's tail, leaving countless wounds, yet most of them had already scabbed over. He was recovering fast. I had evolved my bloodline, so my recovery was naturally strong, but Tang Chongfei didn't have that advantage. He sat on a cushion, his body covered in scars, but his aura was still as fierce as a tiger. Zhang Li, let's form a temporary alliance for offense and defense. Tang Chongfei said as he popped an evolution crystal into his mouth. For a heavily injured paranormal, these helped replenish energy and speed up healing. As a level 2 paranormal and the leader of Haishui, he obviously wasn't short on crystals. You want to ally with me? I raised an eyebrow. We were rivals just a moment ago, and now he's talking about an alliance? Besides, the level 5 mission was over. I had no reason to cooperate. I was going to invite you to join Haishui as vice chairman, but I know you wouldn't be interested. You're right, I'm not. I'd only consider it if I were the chairman, I said, sitting down on a nearby cushion. Tang Changyang's eyes widened. He clearly couldn't believe what he was hearing. No way. I'll never let anyone be my boss. Tang Chongfei waved it off. Don't you think this emergency summons is unusual? I sent people to check. The center and north of town are heavily guarded. Even from a distance, you can tell the military is in a state. One word, heavy losses. We weren't directly involved, but since we've been summoned, there's definitely a mission coming. And the rewards, they won't be small. Rewards. I was actually interested. Everything was almost ready. I was just missing a few extremely hard-to-find items. In the apocalypse, the harder something is to find, the more you have to risk, even your life. If you do me a favor, I might cooperate. I suddenly changed my mind. Tang Chongfei was stunned. Let's hear it. If it's a fight, you'll have to wait for me to recover. I glanced at the wounds covering him. He really was a battle-hardened warrior. It's not a fight, I said. I just thought of something he could actually help with. Hearing it wasn't a fight, Tang Chongfei frowned slightly before speaking. Tell me then. Let's see what I can do. Actually, there are two things. First, I want to ask about the evolution process for a level 2 paranormal, I said calmly. Tang Chongyang's expression shifted, and his gaze became complicated. Why was I asking about level 2 evolution? Could it be? Are you about to evolve? Even Tang Chongfei couldn't help but look me up and down. I barely emitted any paranormal fluctuations, so it was hard to tell just by looking. But my abilities were unique. Just looking at the power of the base vehicle, saying I was about to evolve wasn't impossible. Tang Chongyang felt even more uneasy. If I really evolved, he'd have to avoid me at all costs. And even if it wasn't me, it could be someone on my team. Once a level 2 paranormal appeared, the Shuriying team wouldn't be the same. In the Haiyuan safe zone, the people who truly had a say were either the large organizations or level 2 paranormals. While some level 1s were strong, they were the minority. Level 2 meant absolute power. I looked at Tang Chongfei and didn't answer. Seeing I didn't want to talk about it, he didn't push. Just ask. What was it like when you evolved? I asked. It was quite interesting. I was fighting for my life against a wounded level 2 beast. I fought until I was completely drained, nearly dying along with it. After it died, I lost consciousness completely. I lay in a pool of its blood, absorbing its energy while I was out, and that's how I evolved. Tang Chongfei said. It sounded simple, but I could imagine how dangerous it was. Judging by his demeanor, I knew he wasn't lying. He had no reason to make it up. To dare to fight a level 2 beast while still at level 1, even if it was wounded, meant Tang Chongfei was terrifyingly strong. Evolving while soaked in beast blood after such a brutal fight. It made sense, provided he had accumulated enough energy over time. But after hearing it, I was a bit disappointed. This method was completely inapplicable to Jiang Zhuiying right now. I could figure out the beast blood part, but her problem wasn't a lack of energy. As for fighting until she was drained, even if she woke up, I'd never allow it. With me here, if I still let her struggle on the brink of death, I'd be an irresponsible brother. After the evolution, I was in bad shape. I had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Tang Chongfei saw my expression change and guessed his words hadn't helped. He continued, the lab in the Haiyuan safe zone has developed a serum that can stimulate a paranormal's evolution. When I was in the hospital, I heard that the level 2 paranormals in the military had all used it. But I had already evolved by then, so I didn't try it. I'm not sure about the specifics. My heart jumped, and my eyes lit up. My base vehicle had a biolab, but it wasn't omnipotent. Besides the evolution crystals from the energy lab, the other gene solutions were only for me. Meanwhile, the Safe Zone's lab gathered the best scientists left after the apocalypse. If military level 2s were using it, the serum was definitely legitimate. Looks like you're interested in that serum. After this mission, your team is A-ranked. You're qualified to go to the hospital and see a specialist. But the serum is rare. It won't be easy to get, Tang Chongfei said bluntly. I nodded. I understood. If it were easy to get, level 2 paranormals wouldn't be so rare. Regardless, I had to get my hands on that serum. Thank you. So, what's the second thing you need help with? Tang Chongfei asked. I need your Haishui organization to help me buy these things. I pulled a small notebook and a pen from my pocket and quickly wrote down the items I was missing. Tang Chongyang peeked curiously. He recognized the characters, but didn't understand a thing. Rare metals? Tang Chongfei glanced at the paper. Yes, I need them. Tang Chongfei nodded, clearly assuming I wanted them to upgrade my abilities. He handed the paper to Tang Chongyang. Take this. Have your people spread the word. Tang Chongyang was annoyed. If he'd known, he wouldn't have stood there. Now he was my errand boy. Tang Chongfei was about to say more, but a voice came from outside. Chairman, someone wants to see you. They need to discuss something important. He didn't say anything for a moment, just turned to look outside as if sensing something. After a silence, he turned back to me. Then it's settled. If there's a mission during this assembly, we'll cooperate. It seemed the visitor was indeed important. I stood up. Then I'll head back. Rin Shiyu and Zero were waiting below. Just as I jumped down, I saw a group of people heading toward the truck. The leader was in military uniform, his face resolute. Every step he took in the snow left a deep print, radiating power. I happened to recognize the person with him. It was Yi Bao. The man with Yi Bao didn't radiate intense energy like he did, but his aura was incredibly commanding and tough, a true soldier's presence. Huh. Yi Bao noticed me too. He was clearly surprised, as he remembered me not being on good terms with the Hai Shui organization. Yi Bao, you know this guy? The leader asked curiously. I told you about him before. He's the one we met at the club, Yi Bao replied. Oh, so it's you. He stepped up to me, paused to look me over, and said, so it's you. The one who turned down Li Yinchang's invitation. Humph, you've got guts for someone so young. Jiang Li, this is Commander Wang, Yi Bao introduced him. Come here, let's get acquainted. Commander Wang held out his hand. The moment we shook hands, my expression changed slightly, and I instinctively looked deep into his eyes. I heard you're quite capable. I'd like to see it for myself if there's a chance. The mission after this assembly will be very challenging. You should give it a try. I want to see just how strong your team is to make Li Yinchang take a loss. Is the situation that serious? I asked. Tang Chongfei had already mentioned the fighting was intense. Yi Bao and this Commander Wang were both military, and for them to come in person, things were clearly not simple. The situation? The smile on Commander Wang's face faded a bit. There's some trouble, but humanity's strength isn't to be underestimated. That's enough for today. We have business. We'll talk again when there's a chance. I watched the group board the truck one by one. Jiang, did that Commander Wang catch your attention for a reason? Rin Shiyu asked curiously. Even though she didn't probe my emotions deeply, she noticed something was off just from the slight changes in my face. When Commander Wang appeared, my eyes were almost glued to him. It's nothing. He just seemed a bit special. I looked away. Actually, when I shook Commander Wang's hand, the seed in my body suddenly sent out a signal, reporting that it had detected special mutant energy. Before this, the seed had only sensed this kind of energy from mutant plants, extremely powerful beasts, or special mutant zombies. Commander Wang didn't look like he had anything to do with those things. But I never doubted the seed's detection abilities. If I get the chance, I have to look into this and see what the deal is. I wonder what happened at the main beast nest the military is attacking. Even military elites and level 2 paranormals like Li Yinchang and Yi Bao couldn't handle it and had to call in survivor teams, I said. Still, the Haiyuan safe zone is massive and has a huge population of survivors. The military is incredibly powerful. Even if they faced a beast tide like the one at the Zhonghai safe zone, this place wouldn't fall easily. Now that I'm qualified to enter the Grade A hospital, the most important thing is waking up Jiang Zhuiying. It's just a shame that because of the assembly order, no teams are allowed to leave. I can only wait patiently. Back at the bus, as soon as I stepped onto the small bus, I smelled delicious food. The light from the bus and Rin Shiyu's gentle smile as she rushed to greet me, with Zero right behind her, warmed my heart. My body finally relaxed, and exhaustion began to set in. I rubbed my hands, brushed the snow off my clothes, and smiled as I walked inside. Yusin, get some beers. Let's all have a drink tonight. Where are Zhang Hai and Su Kuan? Not back yet. I wonder what interesting things they found this time. I hadn't even finished eating when a voice came from outside. Is Captain Jiang here? The door opened, and I looked up from my bowl of meat soup, surprised to see the person standing there. Ding Yi, are you still supposed to be protecting Li Yusin? Ding Yi's face immediately flushed with embarrassment. He didn't dare mention protection in front of me anymore. As a small squad from the Great Eagle, what happened last time was too humiliating. Protecting Miss Li is still our mission, but the town is safe for now, so let's not talk about that. Ding Yi replied. I'm here on Vice Commander Li's orders to invite Captain Jiang. At the mention of Vice Commander Li, Ding Yi seemed to regain some confidence, standing a bit taller. Vice Commander Li? Li Yinchang. I was even more confused. What did Li Yinchang want with me? I'm not sure of the details. You'll know when you get there, Captain Jiang, Ding Yi said. I thought for a moment and nodded. I'll go with you. Zero, come with me. I'd feel safer with Zero along. Even though there shouldn't be any danger in the military camp, thinking about the special mutant energy the seed detected on Commander Wong, I felt it was better to be cautious. Sitting in the military jeep, Zero asked in a low voice, Jiang, why do you think Li Yinchang is looking for you? Your guess is as good as mine, I replied. Maybe it's like when Commander Wong and Yi Bao went to see Tang Chongfei. Something about the beast nest. They probably want to assign us a mission in advance. Zero said. Tang Chongfei is highly regarded but injured, so Yi Bao and Commander Wong went to him personally. I was invited to join the military by Li Yinchang before, so it's not strange for him to look for me now. I think so too. I mainly want to hear what the situation is. I'm curious, I said. Li Yinchang is the vice commander for this operation, so his status is very high. He definitely has more info than the average survivor. Even just hearing about the state of the Haiyuan safe zone would be enough for me to gauge the situation elsewhere. The apocalypse isn't like peacetime. Information is fragmented. It's like driving at night. You only see what's in your headlights, while everything else is pitch black. The unknown is the greatest fear. Ding Yi sat in the front vehicle. The two cars drove into town, through the temporary fence, and into the military zone. As vice commander, Li Yinchang didn't have private quarters. He moved his sleeping area directly into the temporary command center. Day and night, the headquarters was buzzing. Soldiers were constantly coming and going, and urgent battle reports were being delivered nonstop. From day to night, the command center was a hive of activity. Soldiers streamed in and out, and urgent battle reports arrived one after another. Li Yinchang sat behind his desk, as steady and deep as the ocean. The soldiers passing the door were affected by his presence. They instinctively tensed up, back straight, terrified of showing even a hint of negligence. Since entering the battlefield, he had been on the front lines almost constantly, barely resting, even while taking on the burden of command in this crisis. His boundless energy and decisiveness earned him the silent respect of everyone around him. Someone was already seated on the sofa across from Li Yinchang. This man wore camouflage fatigues and had only one eye, radiating a palpable aura of ferocity. Most people would have felt their knees go weak just facing that cold stare. Yet, the way he looked at Li Yinchang was filled with respect, even a touch of admiration. I've told Ding Yi to find a survivor team to coordinate with you. That team is almost entirely made up of espers. Their mobility and combat power are top tier. I can't spare any more regular troops right now, so partnering with a survivor team is your best bet. Li Yinchang said. One Eye replied, his voice steady. I'll follow your lead, Captain. Good. These survivor teams might only be here for the rewards, but they've proven to be quite effective. Li Yinchang nodded. Just then, Ding Yi arrived at the door, looking excited. He announced loudly, Vice Commander, I've brought Jiang Lushi. As soon as he spoke, One Eye on the sofa twitched. Captain Luo, did you just get back from the front? One Eye only gave him a glance and didn't answer. Jiang Lushi is the captain of the survivor team I mentioned. Ding Yi, bring them in, Li Yinchang said. Shortly after, Zero and I entered the office. The moment I walked in, my eyes landed on Li Yinchang, then shifted to One Eye. In this small room, it felt like a gathering of tigers and wolves. Li Yinchang went without saying. He was powerful enough to make anyone wary. I had fought Tang Chongfei, a level 2 esper, before, but Li Yinchang felt even more unfathomable. Even among level 2s, he seemed to be on a completely different level. As for One Eye, though he might not be a level 2 esper yet, he was very close. A murderous aura rolled off him, as if he had just stepped out of countless life and death battles. Even in his clean uniform, he gave off the feeling that his hands were still stained with blood. Captain Jiang, let me introduce you. This is Luo Fei, Captain Luo. He leads one of the 2 strongest teams in the Eagle unit. Li Yinchang introduced him. I'm not sure why you're looking for me, Commander Li, I asked directly. I think you've already guessed, so I won't beat around the bush. Unexpected complications have arisen. The original battle plan has been temporarily shelved. As you know, humanity still knows very little about beast nests, and every nest is different. Some are insect hives, others are gathering spots for massive numbers of mutated beasts. But no matter the type, they are all incredibly difficult to deal with. Li Yinchang continued. I'll be blunt. I have a mission, and I want you to work with Luo Fei to complete it." He spoke as he handed me a file. I looked down at it. My expression was calm at first, but as I read on, my brow furrowed. "Luo Fei will head in for reconnaissance, while we take a different route to provide cover?" I looked up and asked. "That's right. We can offer a very high reward for this mission, which would directly upgrade your team's status. From then on, you'd receive priority treatment in the Heiyuan safe zone, nearly equal to that of elite military units. You can get all of that just by completing one mission. I don't see any reason for you to refuse. As for why we chose you, it's because we're short on manpower," Li Yinshang added. "Besides, with that bus of yours, entering the nest shouldn't be a problem." I looked at the mission description. If it really was just a support role, the reward was indeed tempting. But, right now, I have more important matters to attend to. I'm really not interested in this mission. I put the file down and spoke plainly. Li Yinshang stared at me for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You've turned me down time and time again. I wonder what could be so important." He had sought me out because he heard I had worked with the Doomsday Tramps to complete a level 5 clearing mission and performed exceptionally well. He didn't expect that when he offered a mission personally, I would refuse again. I remained silent. If this were before today, I might have told him I was looking for a cure, but not now. "Understood. Then I'll find another team." "Ding Yi, see Captain Zhang out," Li Yinshang said calmly. As a level 2 Esper and the vice commander of this operation, he held immense prestige in both the military and the survivor circles. He had personally invited me, offered a mission, promised rewards, and even paired me with a top subordinate like Luo Fei. Yet I had rejected him again. Clearly, he didn't want to waste any more words. Throughout the entire exchange, Captain Luo, the one-eyed man, sat silently without saying a word. As he escorted Zero and me out, Ding Yi couldn't help but steal a few glances at me. To him, repeatedly turning down Li Yinshang was nothing short of arrogant. Li Yinshang used to think highly of me, but this time, I had clearly made him lose face. Even if he didn't hold a grudge personally, plenty of others would come looking for trouble, whether they were Li Yinshang's loyalists or those looking to score points by sucking up to him. "There's definitely going to be trouble later," I said, glancing back at the city hall. "Yeah," Zero nodded. "But it's fine. If we can't stay in Heiyuan, we'll just go somewhere else." I replied nonchalantly. With the base vehicle in my hands, I never really cared that much about safe zones anyway. The things Ding Yi was worried about weren't even on my radar. That mission just now wasn't as simple as they made it sound. Zero suddenly spoke up. I nodded. If I hadn't directly faced a mother beast before, I might have thought the mission was just about providing cover. But now it's different. Moreover, through Ran Shiyu's spiritual vision, I had a certain understanding of the beast nest, unlike the other survivor squads who were practically flying blind. Driving the minibus into the beast nest wouldn't be hard, but getting out would be a massive problem. The more I read the mission description, the more I felt this wasn't about providing cover. It was about being bait. Operating in a complex beast nest, while my teammates and I didn't understand it as well as Luo Fei did. If we weren't strong enough, we wouldn't even qualify as bait. And my squad perfectly met that condition. As long as my squad could hold off the mother beast and the mutant beasts in the nest, Luo Fei's mission would be considered complete. But with this kind of mission, even Luo Fei might not make it out alive. For Luo Fei, maybe just gathering and reporting the situation inside the nest was enough. For Li Yinshang, and even the military, individual lives didn't matter. Completing the mission was the only priority. Naturally, Li Yinshang would never say these things out loud. Of course, this was all just my speculation. Maybe the situation wasn't as bad as I thought, but either way, the danger level was extremely high. Once the lockdown is lifted, we're heading back to the Heiyuan safe zone, I said in a low voice. The next day, the remaining survivor squads arrived one after another. By noon, when the all-clear siren sounded, my Shuriing squad also received a notice from a soldier. All survivor squads were to gather at the square in front of the town hall. This time, I only brought Ran Shiyu along, and the two of us headed to the square. Before even reaching the barricades, I saw a massive crowd. At a glance, there had to be 200 or 300 people. The other squads had only sent 2 or 3 representatives, So the people here actually only made up about 20% of the total survivors in the town. Let's stand over in that corner, Ran Shiyu said softly. Many of the survivors were rough, burly men, and her appearance quickly drew a lot of stares. Not only was she beautiful, but with her growing spiritual ability, her aura stood out from the crowd, making someone with her cold personality feel very uncomfortable. Let's go, I nodded. Right at that moment, the crowd suddenly parted on its own. A highly conspicuous group of survivors walked out from the center of the square. Just one look, and you could tell they had been through countless life and death battles. Their confidence radiated from strength forged in blood and fire. Their aura and gaze alone were completely different from ordinary people, causing those around them to subconsciously step back, wariness clear in their eyes. At first, I didn't pay attention to this group, just leading Ran Shiyu toward a quieter corner. But when she turned her head, I also realized that the group was heading straight for us. We don't seem to know these people, Ran Shiyu whispered. I frowned. We don't. I had already planned to head back to Heiyuan today. As for my promise to Tang Chongfei, I could only apologize. Just the thought of trouble coming my way made me annoyed. Right now, I didn't want to get involved in any mess. My expression turned cold. I stopped, my hand resting on my gun, while pulling Ran Shiyu behind me. My eyes locked onto the people approaching. Leading them was a woman with her long hair tied in a neat ponytail, wearing a short jacket over a tight black top and shorts, revealing her fair neck and long, toned legs. A colorful fierce tiger tattoo on one of her thighs added to her wild, explosive vibe. Her weapon was even more eye-catching, a massive machete slung across her back. If it weren't for her agile and light figure, many would doubt if she could even lift the damn thing. What do you want? I asked. The woman glanced at me, suddenly flicked her jacket, and a cold glint flashed in her hand. Her movement was incredibly fast. The people around hadn't even registered it. But she suddenly froze, because a dark gun barrel was already pointed straight at her face. Even as fast as lightning, she was still a beat slower than me. My muzzle was aimed right at her forehead. The burly men behind her instantly shrank their pupils, their hands reaching for their weapons. The woman stiffened, then let out a laugh. She slowly opened her hand, letting a small throwing knife drop into the snow. Don't misunderstand, I don't mean any harm. At that exact moment, from the windows of the houses around the square, rows of gun barrels poked out. What are you doing? Fighting is strictly prohibited here, an angry soldier shouted. I kept my eyes locked on her, but I holstered my gun. You tried to attack me, and you say you mean no harm? I said coldly, my stance still ready, needing only a split second to act. I just wanted to test you out. Looks like I wasn't wrong. You're Jiang Lushir, right? I know you have a beautiful girl with gray eyes by your side. I heard quite a few stories about you last night, she continued. I'm from the Fierce Tiger Gang. The Fierce Tiger Gang? I recalled the convoy of heavy trucks that entered the town yesterday. It seemed they were quite strong. Don't let there be a next time. If anyone tries to sneak attack me, if I had been just a bit faster, the trigger would have been pulled. After I finished speaking, I turned and walked away with Ran Shiyu. Attacking just to test the waters? I wasn't the easygoing type. Any goodwill I had for the Fierce Tiger Gang was gone. What a badass. A burly guy behind her couldn't help but mutter. The woman raised an eyebrow. You think he's tough? If we really fought, do you think that kid could beat me? I looked like a college student, and she was only a few years older than me. Yet just now, she hadn't gained the upper hand at all, and even got a gun pointed at her head. Very few people dared to do that to her. Thinking of this, she felt even more frustrated. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The roar of engines echoed as two modified armored vehicles drove straight into the square, followed by an infantry fighting vehicle. With the signature green camouflage and soldiers standing at attention, saluting in unison, the chatting survivors immediately knew a VIP had arrived. The woman glanced at my back and Ran Shiyu's, scoffing coldly. Let them go for now. Let's move. The Fierce Tiger Syndicate arrogantly pushed their way back into the crowd, heading straight for the front. There were also a few members of the Doomsday Beggars there, but Ho Dingquan was nowhere to be seen. I didn't see Tang Chongfei either, and even Tang Chongyang was absent. They were probably recovering from their injuries and only sent their subordinates. Several people stepped down from the armored vehicles and infantry fighting vehicles, Li Yinchang, Yi Bao, and Division Commander Wang, whom I had met last night. There were two others I didn't recognize, but their demeanor suggested they held high status in Heiyuan. Beside them stood a silver-haired general. Even though he was an ordinary human, his imposing aura was overwhelming. He stood in front of Li Yinchang, leading me to guess that he was the commander-in-chief of this mission. The commander-in-chief stood on the infantry fighting vehicle, his calm gaze sweeping across the square. Even though the survivors here were naturally unruly and free-spirited, under that gaze, they gradually fell silent and stood a little straighter. Once the square was almost completely silent, he finally spoke. I don't like spouting nonsense. I've gathered you all here today for the one thing you care about most. What exactly happened on the front lines? He paused, then continued, his voice heavy. Right now, we can't draw any conclusions. I can only tell you one thing. The casualties are catastrophic. Many teams went in and never came out. The military has suffered massive losses. Even Division Commander Wang's unit, standing right behind me, took a heavy hit. He himself barely made it out alive. I looked over at Division Commander Wang. He had his head bowed, his body trembling slightly from emotion. Despite the distance, the starseed inside me clearly detected a distinct, mutated energy radiating from him. What the hell is that? I thought to myself. The commander-in-chief continued. We discovered a massive beast nest, and something went terribly wrong inside. Now, we must launch a counterattack before the threat from this nest spreads to the Heiyuan safety zone. All of you here, along with your teams, whether you're locals or outsiders, have gathered here because you want a safe place to survive. In this apocalypse, having a place to sleep peacefully and live like a normal human being is incredibly precious. The Heiyuan safety zone isn't just our home. It's the home of hundreds of thousands of civilians. It's your home. In this counterattack, the military needs you to execute several crucial and precise missions. Of course, you aren't part of the military. I have no intention of giving you orders. But if you refuse this mission and are unwilling to protect the Heiyuan safety zone, you will never receive another mission from the military again. As soon as he finished, a wave of murmurs erupted through the crowd. This new rule was a massive shock to the veteran teams of Heiyuan, but it barely affected me at all. I glanced at Li Yinchang. Standing beside the infantry fighting vehicle, he stood perfectly straight, making no effort to hide his imposing aura. Just sensing it made you feel like you were facing a ferocious beast. Right then, his gaze flicked over, piercing through the crowd to look straight at me before immediately turning away. But I caught it. In that brief moment, his eyes were so cold it was like he was looking at an ant. I let out a cold sneer and simply shot him a glance back. At that moment, Division Commander Wang was speaking to Li Yinchang. I heard Zhang Luxia rejected you again yesterday. Yeah, there's a saying for that. Not knowing what's good for him, Li Yinchang replied calmly. You must be pissed. No, he's not worth mentioning. Then he's going to have a hard time surviving from now on. Li Yinchang maintained his indifferent expression. He brought it upon himself. He wouldn't go out of his way to attack me, but he had no reason to help me either. If someone else wanted to deal with me, he wouldn't interfere. How does the saying go? An innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Division Commander Wang said. Right then, Li Yinchang suddenly looked at him. Are you all right? Why do you keep shaking? I'm fine. Division Commander Wang shook his head, looking down to hide his pale face. In reality, his entire body was trembling uncontrollably, his teeth chattering. I glanced around before looking back at Division Commander Wang, suspicion rising in my chest. No matter how emotional someone was, it couldn't last this long. Just then, the starseed inside me sent a signal. Special mutated energy detected. Energy levels rising. Ren Shiyu, take a look at that man, I said immediately. Shiyu nodded. She condensed her psychic ability into a thin thread, locking onto Division Commander Wang without affecting anyone else. In this situation, there could very well be other psychic paranormals around. Expanding her perception too much would easily cause trouble. Even though it was risky, my intuition told me I had to figure this out. The moment she locked onto the target, Shiyu's expression changed drastically. His mental aura. At the same time, Division Commander Wang seemed to sense her power. He abruptly raised his head, startling me. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression turning ferocious, just like His mental aura is exactly like a zombie's or a mutant beast's, Shiyu exclaimed. Hold on. Without hesitation, I shouted and immediately shoved my way through the crowd. My eyes were locked onto Division Commander Wang. I quickened my pace, pushing people aside with both hands, ignoring their curses. My mind was reeling. Paranormals usually had a natural resistance to the virus. Otherwise, they would have mutated long ago. But just last night, Division Commander Wang was completely normal. As I got closer, his body convulsed even more violently. He stumbled back 2 steps, a flash of internal struggle in his eyes. The commander-in-chief watched me part the crowd like a flood, while Li Yinchang furrowed his brows. What are you doing? He clearly didn't want to see me. I have a few questions, I said as I kept walking forward. This is not the place for questions. Do you have a problem with the rules we just announced? Rules are rules. If you don't accept the mission, you won't get any military missions in the future. His voice was cold. So he misunderstood. I couldn't be bothered to care anymore. By now, I had closed in on the IFV. I was no longer blocked by the crowd, with only a few scattered people left, like the fierce tiger gang. Division Commander Wang seemed to have reached his limit. Li Yinchang frowned deeper, preparing to signal his subordinates to stop me. Captain Yi, look at Division Commander Wang. I shouted. My urgent action and serious expression made Yi Bao freeze, instinctively turning his head to look. At that exact moment, a low roar erupted from Division Commander Wang's throat, and he lunged straight at the person closest to him, Li Yinchang. What horrified me was that the explosive power and speed were so terrifying that even a level 2 ability user like Yi Bao couldn't react in time. Li Yinchang felt the fierce force rushing at him from behind, and his expression instantly changed. He had been preparing to give an order and was completely off guard, but in that life-or-death moment, his terrifying combat instincts kicked in. He leaned to the side to dodge, his hands directly grabbing Division Commander Wang's shoulders. If grabbed, Division Commander Wang's shoulders would definitely be severely injured, but it would also help subdue him instantly. In the middle of such a large crowd, and not yet knowing what exactly was going on, Li Yinchang naturally couldn't just kill Division Commander Wang outright. But the moment his hands gripped the opponent's shoulders, Li Yinchang knew he had made a mistake. Division Commander Wang's eyes were blood red, veins bulging on his face, forehead, and the back of his hands. The explosive power was so terrifying it exceeded all imagination. Even though he was restrained, he completely ignored his shoulders and arms. His neck suddenly elongated past human limits, snapping his head around to bite straight into Li Yinchang's arm. What are you doing? Li Yinchang reacted incredibly fast, instantly swinging his arm to throw Division Commander Wang away. His body was tossed like a sack, slamming heavily into the crowd in front of the town hall with a dull thud. Li Yinchang looked down, his face instantly darkening. Even though he managed to dodge, his sleeve was torn, revealing faint teeth marks on his skin. Blood began to seep out. With Li Yinchang's physique, this kind of wound should have healed in no time. But as he stared at the bite, blood continued to ooze, its color gradually turning black. The veins and blood vessels on his wrist twitched violently, making his fingers tremble uncontrollably. The sight reminded Li Yinchang of Division Commander Wang's trembling earlier, and his face grew even gloomier. Virus. Li Yinchang immediately tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and tied it tightly around his arm, right above the bite. Tying it that tightly meant the arm could undergo necrosis from lack of blood flow. But he knew very well that this arm couldn't be saved anyway. Losing an arm was a heavy blow for Li Yinchang. He turned his head to look at where Division Commander Wang had landed. A few people nearby hesitated, afraid to get close, while others looked clearly suspicious. Get out of the way. Right then, Division Commander Wang sprang up from the ground. His body twisted grotesquely. That fall should have incapacitated him, yet his vitality was ferocious. He swung his arm, instantly tearing into the man standing closest to him, leaving a deep gash as a blood-curdling scream rang out. Yi Bao had already rushed over from behind, grabbing Division Commander Wang's head and slamming it hard into a concrete pillar. A dry crack echoed as blood splattered everywhere. Yi Bao let go, and Division Commander Wang slowly slumped down. Get someone to autopsy the body immediately, Yi Bao roared. Take the injured away for quarantine, Li Yinchang said in a deep voice, then quickly scanned the crowd. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. The surrounding survivors were still in shock. Li Yinchang didn't see me anywhere, but as he looked down at the crowd, an extremely bad premonition rose within him. Commander, where are Division Commander Wang's subordinates? Which squads retreated with him? His voice dropped low. What Li Yinchang was thinking was exactly what the Supreme Commander was thinking. In that moment, the Supreme Commander seemed to age several years. Division Commander Wang's squad is mostly stationed in the barracks, but the heavily injured soldiers and the squads that suffered major losses have already been brought back to the safe zone to recover. Saying those words seemed to drain the Supreme Commander of all his strength. They originally didn't know what bizarre things existed in the beast nest, which was why they organized this rally, hoping to eliminate the threat before it could erupt. But no one expected that the danger from the beast nest had already been silently sown long ago. Hurry! In a small alley, I grabbed Ran Shiyu's hand and ran like the wind. The Supreme Commander just said Division Commander Wang and his subordinates barely escaped with their lives. If Division Commander Wang had mutated, then his subordinates definitely had too. It wasn't safe here anymore. After mutating, Division Commander Wang was even able to injure Li Yinchang. Even though it was because Li Yinchang was caught off guard, Division Commander Wang's explosive strength, speed, and deformed joints made me extremely worried. What was even more terrifying was that this virus was highly contagious. Li Yinchang reacted immediately after being bitten. That proved that just a bite or scratch from an infected person would cause the virus to take effect instantly. Before this, Division Commander Wang must have gone through an incubation period of a few days after leaving the beast nest, but once it erupted, it was incredibly fast. Is it the zombie virus? Ran Shiyu asked softly, panting heavily. Probably not. The starseed detected a special mutant energy. The source could be a beast nest or an insect nest, but neither is related to zombies. Only one thing is certain. This virus is even more dangerous than the normal zombie virus, to the point where even a level 2 ability user can't resist it. Viruses can evolve too, and the current virus is far different from the initial one that infected the Earth. Fortunately, this time the virus only broke out locally, not spreading globally. It only spreads through wounds and can't be transmitted easily. I guess that the blood and saliva of the infected were both contagious. Li Yinchang was bitten, and someone else was scratched when Division Commander Wang was covered in blood, his nails also stained with his own blood. The problem was that in the early stages, the people being attacked had absolutely no precautions, so the number of infected probably wouldn't be small. I also think this virus is hard to spread on a large scale. Ran Shiyu said, I felt Division Commander Wang's spiritual power. If he hadn't been killed, he probably would have died on his own in a few days. But that's just my guess. Even so, a virus this potent was enough to turn the entire area into a living hell. Even if the infected died very quickly, it wouldn't change that horrifying reality. At the very least, this characteristic ensured the virus wouldn't spread outward, sparing the survivors from facing yet another new pandemic. We have to get out of here and head back to the safe zone immediately, I said. Being pulled along by me, Ran Shiyu looked at my back, and a familiar feeling from the early days of the apocalypse suddenly welled up in her heart. Back then, she was terrified and desperate, her whole body trembling from the bone-chilling cold. But right now, an indescribable sense of peace emerged in her heart. Feeling the warmth transferring from my hand, Ran Shiyu gently squeezed my hand a little tighter. At the same time, in the minibus, Ying, who was resting with her eyes closed, suddenly snapped her eyes open. She quickly stepped into the cabin and sat down in the driver's seat. With a clack, the vehicle door popped open, and Ying's voice rang out from inside. Get in. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, who were standing outside smoking, both froze. Sun Kuan threw his cigarette into the snow, while Zhang Hai tried to take 2 more deep drags before tossing his away, quickly jumping onto the bus. The door slammed shut, and Ying immediately started the engine, a deep rumble echoing out. What happened? Sun Kuan asked in confusion. This is all military territory. What could possibly happen? But Ying's reaction gave him the feeling that this was absolutely no small matter. Going to pick up Brother Jiang. Ing replied curtly. Sun Kuan had to give up, knowing that asking more wouldn't pry anything out of this cold beauty. When I wasn't around, Ing almost never initiated a conversation, seemingly uncaring about anyone else in the squad. Li Yusin sat looking out the window, her heart also filled with doubt and worry. As Ran Shiyu and I were sprinting through the alley, a piercing, agonizing scream suddenly echoed from afar. Immediately after came rapid gunfire and terrified shrieks. I turned to look back. The sounds were coming from the north of the town, where the military barracks were stationed. Right then, the roar of an engine sounded, and the minibus appeared at the end of the alley ahead. I pulled Ran Shiyu out of the alley, jumping straight onto the bus while the door was still open. Let's go. As soon as I got on, I immediately gave the order. The door shut instantly. The minibus shot out of the alley, took a sharp turn at the intersection, and sped straight out of town. At this point, the deal with Tang Chongfei was no longer important. I had no intention of going back to warn anyone either. This wasn't the first time I had experienced a situation like this. Whether it was Tang Chongfei or Ho Dingquan, both knew what decisions to make in this kind of scenario. If they misjudged and made the wrong choice, that was the price they had to bear themselves. I realized my own mindset had changed a lot compared to the early days of the apocalypse. The minibus sped down the road leading back to the Heiyuan safe zone. The snow on the road was crushed by the tires, turning into a layer of filthy slush. After driving for a while, Ran Shiyu suddenly turned to look back. Brother Jiang, someone is chasing us. Ignore them. Just keep driving. I replied. From a distance, I could also faintly see a few large trucks, but right now I had neither the mood nor the time to tangle with anyone. A vague sense of anxiety rose in my heart. I hoped the safe zone was still okay right now. At this moment, Li Yusin's face paled slightly as she asked anxiously, Brother Jiang, what exactly happened? She didn't know the specifics, but the abnormal sounds and gunfire in the town were enough to tell her things had gone wrong. If it were just mutant beasts, I wouldn't have rushed everyone away like this. You don't need to worry. Your grandfather and mother are both in Zone A, which is heavily guarded, I said, then glanced at Jiang Zhuiying, who was lying on the bed. In her sleep, she looked incredibly peaceful, her cute little nose, her pink lips slightly parted, her chest gently rising and falling with her steady breathing. The reason I rushed back to the safe zone, besides wanting to help Li Yusin ensure her family's safety, was for a more important reason, the serum. The minibus continued to speed along. The previous battles had almost completely wiped out the zombies and mutant beasts in this area. Occasionally, a few stragglers would appear in the distance, but before they could even get close, the bus had already zoomed past. Not long after, the familiar outlines of the Heiyuan safe zone appeared in our line of sight. When we reached the quarantine gate, I took a careful look around. At first glance, everything seemed the same as before, but the weapon and artillery positions had clearly been reinforced, and the officers all looked tense. Probably because the main force left to attack the beast nest, so they had to beef up defenses here. Sun Kuan said, though he didn't really believe his own words. Reinforcing defenses made sense, but this atmosphere was clearly abnormal. Zhang Hai rolled down the window. Reporting in, Shuriying Squad. A soldier inspected the minibus, then walked over to report to an officer. Shortly after, the soldier returned, his voice stern. Currently, you are temporarily forbidden from entering the safe zone. A sense of unease instantly welled up in my heart. It seemed things were developing in the worst possible direction. Being blocked outside the gate at a time like this could only prove one thing. Something had gone wrong inside the safe zone. We have to get inside. We are survivors of the safe zone. Are you planning to leave us out in the freezing cold until nightfall? I said. This is an order, the soldier frowned, replying coldly. For ability users, this freezing weather was nothing. Seeing that the soldiers had absolutely no intention of letting us in, Li Yusin hurriedly rolled down the window, poking her head out, her voice full of anxiety. Something happened, didn't it? My grandfather and mother are both experts at the research institute. We must go inside. You can't stop us. The soldier hesitated for a moment, but ultimately shook his head firmly. No entry means no entry. Move your vehicle to the side. How can you do this? Li Yusin wanted to argue further, but the soldier had already turned and walked away. Ran Shiyu held Li Yusin's hand, squeezing it gently to reassure her. I stayed silent, my eyes glued to the quarantine gate, my mind quickly weighing the possibility of forcing our way through the defense line with the minibus. As a major safe zone, Haiyuan's defenses were even stronger than Zhonghai's used to be. Cannons with barrels as thick as a thigh, heavy machine guns mounted on stands taller than a person. Soldiers armed with automatic rifles stood densely packed around the gate, some with guns slung over their shoulders, others manning the machine guns directly. On the walls, countless dark gun barrels were pointed straight at us. Not to mention the massive iron gate was shut tight, leaving only a small passage for pedestrians, making the defense even tighter. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Engines roared, accompanied by the sound of tires crunching on the snow. 3 heavy trucks approached the quarantine gate simultaneously, 2 of them sandwiching my minibus in the middle. Compared to those massive trucks fitted with ferocious mutant beast horns, our little minibus looked completely unremarkable. It looked like it could be crushed at any moment, putting immense pressure on everyone inside. "It's the people who were tailing us," Ran Shiyu said softly. The window of the truck on the right rolled down, revealing the face of the long-haired woman. "Not bad. You run pretty fast. If it weren't for the snow, we probably wouldn't have caught up to you." In the snow, even though my minibus always drove at high speeds, it was still somewhat restricted. I glanced over and said coldly, "You guys again." I was actually a bit surprised that the woman from the Fierce Tiger Gang was driving the truck herself. It also showed how reckless she was, daring to drive a heavy truck at high speeds through the snow, ignoring the risk of skidding or flipping over. "How did you figure out that guy was infected? How did you see it?" the long-haired woman suddenly asked. At the time, she and the rest of the Fierce Tiger Gang were standing in the front row. When I suddenly shouted and charged forward, she had no idea what I was trying to do, let alone expected such a horrifying event to follow. When everyone else's attention was focused on Division Commander Wong, her eyes had remained locked on me. Because of that, she was the first to notice me turning and leaving without hesitation. After sending 2 people to report back, she immediately gave chase. By now, the whole town is probably a slaughterhouse. It's a bloodbath. So many people didn't notice a thing, yet you were the only one who did, she continued. The Fierce Tiger Gang had been warned and probably managed to retreat in time, so she wasn't too worried. Her only purpose in chasing me was to find out how I detected the infected, because that would be incredibly useful for the Fierce Tiger Gang in dealing with similar situations. Not knowing how the virus spread, not knowing who was infected, it was truly hard to defend against. I shot her a glance, feeling nothing but annoyance. Whether I found out through the starseed or some other way, I had no intention of telling her. Just because she asked, did I have to answer? "No parking here." A soldier walked over, shouting a warning, demanding we move our vehicles to the side. Right at that moment, gunfire suddenly erupted from inside the safe zone. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed clearly, coming from a location not too far away. The soldier jumped, turning his head to look in that direction. I clearly saw the tension and gravity appear on the officers' faces. Earlier, a large force had left to attack the beast nest, and now an infection incident had broken out within the military. They had to maintain security for the safe zone while dealing with the internal threat, all while clearly being severely understaffed. "Deploy 2 squads for backup. We must control the danger zone," an officer immediately ordered. 2 patrol squads quickly climbed into armored vehicles. Soon after, the quarantine gates slowly opened, emitting a heavy metallic groan. 3 armored vehicles drove inside one after another. Something happened inside, too. The long-haired woman watched the gate, then turned back to my minibus. "What about you guys?" At that exact moment, the minibus window slammed shut. I shouted a low command, "Charge in." Ing instantly slammed the gas pedal, activating the acceleration mode. The minibus shot forward like an arrow from a bow, a piercing screech of friction ringing out as it forcefully broke away from the 2 heavy trucks, barreling straight toward the quarantine gate. This sight not only stunned the long-haired woman, but also horrified the soldiers and officers standing guard. This was the first time anyone had dared to crash the gates of the safe zone directly. No one expected the minibus to be that fast. Not a single person dared to jump out and block the vehicle. Instead, the soldiers in front instinctively backed away to the sides. "Open fire," an officer roared. Forcing entry into the safe zone without permission is an offense punishable by death on the spot. Bang, bang, bang. A hail of bullets instantly rained down on the minibus, but they only left spiderweb-like cracks on the glass, completely failing to pierce through. The bullets hitting the tires didn't cause any damage either. In the blink of an eye, the minibus had already blown past the gate before it could close. The furious officer rushed to the gate, watching helplessly as the minibus turned onto another street and quickly disappeared around the bend. "Notify all patrol units and security forces in all sectors immediately. If you spot this minibus, shoot it down on sight," he ordered coldly. Just as a communications soldier ran over to relay the order, another soldier rushed out of the checkpoint in a panic. "What's the situation in Zone A?" the officer asked urgently. "Not good, but I don't have the details yet," the soldier reported, his voice trembling. "What do you mean you don't know?" the officer yelled. "My comrades, they might have been attacked." As the soldier finished speaking, his face turned deathly pale, and the officer's heart pounded wildly. The guards in Zone A were all elites. If even they were ambushed, what the hell was happening in Zone A? The Hayuan safe zone housed hundreds of thousands of survivors. Once the situation spiraled out of control, ordinary civilians had absolutely no ability to fight back against those who suddenly mutated. The quarantine gate was set up to screen people at risk of infection and prevent the virus from entering. Yet all this time they hadn't detected any abnormal signs. Everyone thought the zombies had been kept outside the safe zone. No one expected that infected people resembling zombies would appear right inside. The officer no longer had the mind to care about the little minibus. The most important thing was to control the situation and absolutely prevent things from getting out of hand. Fortunately, the most severe problem had only erupted in Zona so far, but ironically, Zone A was the very place the government and military had poured immense effort into protecting. It was the residential hub for top experts, professors, and leading scientists. The long-haired woman standing outside the quarantine gate stared at the chaotic scene before her, momentarily stunned. Are they crazy? Crashing straight into the safe zone. What are they trying to do? She hesitated for a moment, but finally made up her mind, leading her people to charge into the safe zone following the exact path I had taken. When I crashed through earlier, almost all the guns and cannons were aimed at them, making the members in the 3 heavy trucks tense to the extreme. A few bullets had even hit their vehicles just now. Chasing after me not only got her no answers, but they had inadvertently become my escorts, shielding the minibus on both sides. Good thing their trucks were reinforced with thick steel, otherwise they would have taken a beating. What an incredibly unfair situation to get dragged into. Something huge had happened in the Hayuan safe zone. I wonder if the Xiaowu base is having problems too. Let's go. The long-haired woman quickly made a decision. Inside the safe zone, the roads had been locked down, and all survivors were ordered to return home, leaving the streets unusually deserted. This actually made it easier for my minibus to navigate. Gunfire echoed from ahead, but I had no intention of getting closer, as that would only lead to a direct confrontation with the military. In fact, we had already seen several squads of soldiers urgently mobilizing in one direction. Military trucks and even tanks were blocking intersections. The entire safe zone had entered a state of extreme high alert. However, the news of the minibus crashing the quarantine gate hadn't reached all units yet. Some soldiers saw our vehicle, but since we didn't approach them, they didn't pay us any special attention. Even so, I knew very well that if we kept going straight, we would definitely be stopped. We have to take a detour. While turning, I caught a glimpse of the other side. An infected person leaped high into the air, only to be gunned down by a hail of bullets the next second. It seemed there wasn't just one infected person, but at least a whole group, and they were pouring out from zones A and B. The ominous feeling in my heart grew stronger. Even though zones A and B were quarantined, the infected had still broken through the defense lines and spilled out. Even if they were eventually wiped out, the Hayuan safe zone would likely pay a heavy price this time. It might be even worse than the mutant worm attack on the Zhonghai safe zone back then. Head straight to Zone A, I ordered. The minibus sped toward Zone A. From a distance, I could already hear gunfire that was many times denser than before, along with the sight of a massive number of soldiers gathering. The barbed wire fences that were once intact had been torn open in multiple places. Clearly, the infected had swarmed through here. Blood and the corpses of the infected littered the ground, and the barbed wire was stained with fresh blood. Smelling the thick scent of gunpowder, Li Yusin trembled slightly. Brother Jiang. She gripped my arm tightly, her eyes filled with worry and pleading. Last time, I had worked with the Zhonghai Safe Zone military to rescue her family from the nuclear power plant, and this time, coming to Heiyuan was also for her family. Li Yusin didn't dare ask everyone to risk their lives charging into Zone A to save them, because the place was too dangerous right now. Even the military was struggling to hold the line. But for the sake of her grandfather and mother, she couldn't just stand by and do nothing. She could only desperately grip my hand, not knowing what to say. Looking into those eyes and feeling her hand trembling slightly, I reached out and patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, we will definitely find Professor Su and the others," I said. Not only did I have to enter Zone A for the serum anyway, but just based on how well Li Yusin had taken care of Jiang Zhuing all this time, I couldn't ignore her. During the time Zhuing was in a deep sleep, it was often Li Yusin who stayed by her side, monitoring her health, while she herself couldn't eat or sleep well. I saw all of that very clearly. My old classmate, the former campus belle, always as gentle and pure as a white lily, had silently dedicated herself to the Shuriying squad. Despite coming from a wealthy family, she took the initiative to handle most of the chores like cooking and cleaning, always feeling like she wasn't helping enough. Even when I offered her an evolutionary crystal, she refused, thinking it would be a waste to use it on her. But to me, even if Li Yusin just stood quietly on the sidelines, she was still an indispensable part of the squad. A medic's role isn't always busy, but when truly needed, it's the most crucial position of all. Don't overthink it. You turned down 2 safe zones to follow us, so why are you letting your imagination run wild now? I sighed, shaking my head. Li Yusin froze. Hearing my tone, which sounded like I was scolding her, she suddenly felt a wave of grievance. Like a child being comforted by a loved one, she had been able to force herself to stay calm before. But the moment I spoke, her nose stung, and tears uncontrollably welled up in her eyes. "MHM." She bit her lip, not crying out, just nodding slightly. "We can't go in through the main gate. Let's find another place to sneak in." I turned my head and said, "Most of the military's firepower right now is concentrated in areas with a lot of infected. The fact that infected are still spilling out shows the military can't control every corner." Bang, bang, bang. Gunfire rang out again. From a distance, I saw over a dozen figures rush out from inside Zone A, frantically attacking the soldiers. Among them were not only soldiers in uniform, but also ordinary survivors. All of them were just like Division Commander Wang earlier, having lost all reason, leaving only the instinct to destroy. I turned to Ran Shiyu. "Shiyu, I'm counting on you." "MHM." She replied softly, immediately expanding her spiritual vision, silently blanketing the surrounding area. Zones A and B were enclosed by walls and barbed wire fences. Shiyu's spiritual vision traced along the wall, and points of spiritual light appeared one after another. The place with the fewest points of light was the weakest point in the defense, and also the place with the fewest infected. Soon, her gaze focused. "I found a spot nearby where we can get in." I nodded in satisfaction and turned to Ing. "Drive." The minibus started up, quietly bypassing the military positions without making any noticeable noise. Inside Zone A, the once peaceful streets now looked as if they had just gone through another apocalyptic outbreak. Traces of destruction were everywhere, the ground littered with blood and the corpses of the infected. Grr! An infected person growled low, sprinting down the street. Ahead of it was a building where over a dozen people were hiding, including a squad of soldiers. One person in the group, overwhelmed by anxiety, couldn't help but peek through the curtains. At that exact moment, the infected person suddenly looked up, locking eyes with him. Its speed instantly spiked as it charged straight at the building. The man screamed reflexively, and the squad of soldiers immediately opened fire. Boom! A loud crash echoed at the door. Everyone cowered, staring fixedly at the entrance. Blood began to seep through the crack under the door, and then everything fell silent. It had been shot dead. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, including the soldiers. At this moment, among the civilians, an elderly man who still looked very sharp stepped forward, glaring sternly at the person who had opened the curtain. "Don't act on your own. If there was more than one infected out there, you could have gotten us all killed." "I didn't think it would see me," the man said, trembling and full of regret. They didn't know why these people had suddenly become infected. Their characteristics were like zombies, contagious, terrifyingly strong, incredibly fast, with terrifyingly sharp senses. The only lucky thing was that they didn't eat people, but just a bite or scratch would turn the victim into a monster exactly like them. Life in the apocalypse, even for ordinary people like us, is evolving bit by bit. Never underestimate the terror of the virus. That elderly man was Su Guangkai. The building they were hiding in was quite secluded and sturdy, yet the infected still managed to track them down. They clung on like lingering ghosts. Professor Su is right. This virus outbreak was too sudden. Who knows? Maybe it was brought back from the beast nest. We don't even know how far the mutant beasts have evolved. Another person spoke up. The people here were all members of the research institute. When the chaos broke out, someone had escorted them to evacuate, but they were attacked on the way, forcing them to split up and hold their ground. "Experts, professors, please don't worry too much. Someone will come for us soon," the squad leader spoke up to reassure them. Most of these people had been protected since the early days of the apocalypse and had never directly faced a real outbreak, so their experience in handling emergencies was very limited. In the early days, many people died because of panic and their own wrong decisions. Just the simple act of pulling the curtain earlier was enough to let the infected spot them. At this moment, a growl echoed from afar again, making everyone in the building tense up. The soldiers immediately raised their guns. Ammunition was running low. The squad leader had only one thought in his mind, hoping rescue would arrive in time. "Everyone, think of something quickly," a middle-aged man urged anxiously. The squad leader glanced at him. This man had urged them countless times, his slightly chubby frame sweating profusely as he paced back and forth in a state of extreme tension. The squad leader patiently explained once more, "It's not that we aren't trying to think of a way, but we have to ensure everyone's safety first. Your safety is our top priority." That line again. If you really put our safety first, then why did you let us fall into such a dangerous situation? What the hell was that monster just now? Where's the safety? The middle-aged man angrily cut him off. The fear of death had made him almost lose control. Su Guangkai frowned, his voice deep. "Director Lee, you can't say that. If it weren't for these soldiers, do you think you could handle those monsters? You would have been dead long ago." The word dead struck a sensitive nerve in the middle-aged man. He glared at Su Guangkai, roaring, "Dead what? Su Guangkai, don't throw your weight around just because you're older. At the Research Institute, I never got in the way of your research, but don't think I'm actually afraid of you. I only respect you normally, but today I'm not giving anyone face." Saying that, he turned and yelled at the squad leader, "Do you know? Your captain, Zhang Gaoha, is my brother-in-law. Understand? Go find him for me right now." Director Lee was panicked to the extreme. His brother-in-law was the captain of the Zone, a security force, yet he hadn't been rescued first. Instead, he was trapped here, without even a shadow of a rescue team in sight. Su Guangkai had spent his whole life in the laboratory. Faced with these words, he was so angry he could only point his finger, choking on his words. Director Lee couldn't care less about his glare or the glares of the other experts. Right now, he only cared about one thing, staying alive. He had never understood the feeling of being pushed into such a terrifying situation before, but now he did. In this situation, he could abandon anyone, as long as he survived. He had never experienced the early stages of the apocalypse, always living safely in the protected zone, and now he couldn't accept the possibility that he might die. "Dad, don't be angry." Su Tong softly consoled Su Guangkai. In the apocalypse, human nature gradually revealed its true colors. Su Guangkai sighed, not looking at Director Lee anymore. Compared to the present, he had been through far more desperate and difficult days. "I hope rescue comes soon. Otherwise, who knows what other terrible things might happen." Another expert spoke up. Someone had already accidentally attracted an infected person, and now Director Lee was losing control. When fear is compressed to its limit, human reason and emotions can easily collapse. Guided by Ran Shiyu, my group quickly found a spot where we could sneak in. Zones A and B were located on a hillside. Before the apocalypse, this area was a string of villas, resorts, and tourist spots. After the apocalypse, the place was heavily fortified with defensive structures. The two zones were separated by walls and barbed wire, surrounded by dense firepower, making it nearly impossible to infiltrate under normal circumstances. Behind the fence was a large cafeteria that hadn't been affected by the outbreak yet, guarded by only one squad of soldiers. I told Ing to pause in the alley, then suddenly accelerate. The minibus shot forward like a bolt of lightning, clearing the barbed wire fence in the blink of an eye and disappearing behind the cafeteria. The sight left the guards stunned. It was too fast. By the time they focused on the other end of the fence, the vehicle was already out of sight. Zone A was under quarantine, and the people inside were trying everything to escape, yet someone had actually taken the initiative to break in. "We're in," I let out a breath. But there was no relief on Li Yusin's face. Instead, her eyes grew even more anxious. The atmosphere in Zone A was heavy and suffocating. We had only driven a short distance, but traces of blood and battle were everywhere. Li Yusin remembered that her grandfather and mother, two key experts of the research institute, had been assigned a house in the resort area. I had been there once, but in this situation, going there probably wouldn't mean much. The chances of them still being in the same place were very low. Going there would just be a waste of time. The infected must have broken out at the military base and the hospital, and the military base is located on both sides of this area, Li Yusin said, trying to stay calm. She had lived here for a short time, so she had some grasp of the layout. Zone A was originally surrounded by the military to protect key facilities. This time, the source of the infection was the soldiers returning from the beast nest. The injured must have been taken to the hospital. "Let's search around here. It shouldn't be too hard," I said. Sitting in the minibus, we didn't have to worry too much about being ambushed. As the vehicle turned a corner, I suddenly told Ing to stop. I jumped out of the bus and walked over to a corpse by the side of the road. The corpse's eyes were wide open and bloodshot, veins bulging all over its face and neck, its skin a sickly pale green. Actually, I had noticed it earlier, and the starseed had also detected a very special mutant energy. As I observed it closely, a thought flashed through my mind. "Brother Zhang, what's wrong?" Zhang Hai also got off the bus, holding his gun and standing beside me, his eyes vigilant. "Let me take a look." I stared at the corpse for a few seconds, and then it appeared. I suddenly drew my dagger and stabbed it hard into the corpse's arm. Fresh blood instantly spurted out. "Brother Jiang, what are you doing?" Zhang Hai was stunned. "This guy is dead, and he's not a mutant zombie. He doesn't have a mutant nucleus." But before he could finish his sentence, Zhang Hai choked on his words in shock. On the blade of my dagger, a worm was writhing. It was dark red all over, about 10 centimeters long, its body as thin as a thread. When it moved through the blood vessels, I saw it. The moment I stabbed the dagger down, I pinned it precisely so it couldn't escape, then pulled it straight out of the blood vessel. The worm struggled violently, even trying to burrow toward my hand, but I immediately pinned it down into a crack in the bricks on the ground. "What the hell is this?" Zhang Hai's eyes widened, goosebumps rising from disgust. "Step back a bit," I said. "Brother Jiang, it's not that serious. The worm is already like that. It can't possibly burrow into me, can it?" Zhang Hai still didn't get it. "I mean, step away from the corpse. There are definitely more of them inside it," I replied. Even though I had pulled one out, the starseed still detected special mutant energy from the corpse, proving there were quite a few parasites left inside. Just thinking about how this thing was small enough to burrow into a body without a person even feeling it. Just breaking it open could cause an infection. Zhang Hai's scalp went numb, and he immediately jumped back several meters. "This might be a type of parasite," Li Yusin said from inside the bus. "Many parasites can control their host's behavior, and this one makes the infected incredibly strong, agile, and aggressive." She paused for a moment, then continued, "But it's not a virus that mutates cells. It's draining their vitality and stamina. That's why Shiyu said if left alone, Division Commander Wang would die in a few days. So it's not a virus, I nodded. I already knew a bit about parasites that control hosts. Some can alter hormones, making the host lose their sense of fear. Some force the host to commit suicide to complete their reproductive cycle. There were even fungi that made insects act like zombies in pre-apocalyptic movies. Looking at the worm on the ground, I couldn't help but shudder. If the early stages of the apocalypse had broken out because of this thing, humanity might have gone extinct long ago. But it was the supervirus that forced humans to evolve, preserving a sliver of hope for survival. As for this parasite, it was clearly a product of biological mutation after the apocalypse. It came from the beast nest, which meant there could be a massive parasite in the nest, or even an entire swarm. Just thinking about it was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Moreover, these parasites could resonate, simultaneously spreading and controlling their hosts almost at the same time. "Give that worm to me," Li Yusin said. I replied, "This thing is useless to me." I told Zhang Hai to bring down a glass jar and put the worm inside. Even though it was almost cut in half, it stubbornly survived, wriggling nonstop. "Be careful," I warned. "I know," Li Yusin nodded. Holding the jar in her hands, her face couldn't hide her fear and disgust, but she still gripped it tightly, intently observing the parasite through the glass. Bang, bang, bang. After shooting down 2 more infected who rushed over at the sound, the soldiers protecting Su Guangkai and the group of experts grew even more tense. If the situation continued, the number of infected would only increase, appearing endlessly. Their ammunition was already scarce and would run out sooner or later. The best plan was to break out, but they had to protect too many people, especially Su Guangkai and 2 other elderly experts. These people had almost no ability to defend themselves. They were all researchers used to staying in labs. Letting them face those infected, who were no different from monsters, was far too dangerous. Losing even a single expert was an irreplaceable loss. At this moment, Su Tong handed a bottle of water to Su Guangkai. "Dad, drink some water." He glanced at it, but didn't take it. He had managed to stay calm earlier, but seeing everyone around him panicking and tense, he couldn't maintain his composure either. Ever since Li Yusin left the Zhonghai safe zone, they had always worried about her. They had only been reunited for a few days, and now this happened. Su Guangkai wasn't worried about himself, but about Li Yusin, who was currently very close to the beast nest. The sudden appearance of a large number of infected proved that the outbreak originated from those returning from the beast nest. "Dad, don't worry too much. Yusin is with Little Zhang's squad. They will definitely be safe." Su Tong knew very well what her father was worried about. Su Guangkai nodded. "True, with my squad's strength, escaping the beast nest wouldn't be too difficult." But the problem was that the Heiyuan safe zone had now fallen into chaos as well. "Rescue still hasn't arrived. We've decided to send 2 soldiers out to find help," the squad leader walked over and said. "Find help?" Su Guangkai and Su Tong were both surprised. The other experts and professors were also momentarily stunned, but a few nodded. "That's good. Go quickly." "Go where?" "You bunch of bookworms. You've studied so much your brains are broken," Director Li yelled, turning to question the squad leader. "There are 6 of you. If you send 2 out to find help, how are the remaining 4 supposed to protect us? I bet you're going to take ammo with you too, right? I saw it. You just checked your ammo. You barely have any left." Director Li had completely lost control of his emotions. He had been watching the soldiers' every move, because his own safety depended entirely on them. "I say just send 1 person. Give him a little ammo, and that's it. He's going to find help, not fight a war. As long as he's careful and sneaks past those monsters, it'll be fine." "Absolutely not." The squad leader immediately rejected the idea. "It's easy for you to say, but no one can predict the situation out there. If 1 person goes out and runs into 2 or 3 monsters, he's dead for sure. Sending 2 is already a risk. If you want to avoid the monsters, then all of you need to stay quiet and be even more careful." Director Li was furious to the extreme. He already felt zero sense of security, and now they were reducing the number of guards. But the squad leader had no intention of listening to him. While Director Li was still muttering and complaining, the 2 soldiers had already finished preparing to head out. "Then bring Zhang Gaohe back here to me," Director Li said. "Right now?" He only wanted to be under Zhang Gao's protection. Only then would he truly feel safe. Staying with this bunch of old and weak people, he completely couldn't keep his cool. Director Lee blurted that out when he couldn't stop them from seeking help, while the squad leader immediately went to make arrangements. Soon, the two soldiers left the room under everyone's watchful eyes. As the door closed and their figures disappeared, everyone felt their hearts hanging in midair, filled with both anxiety and hope. The minibus continued to move, while Ran Xiu constantly expanded her spiritual vision, searching for signs of human life. Suddenly she spoke up. I sensed two people moving. But just a second later, she continued. Now there's only one. There's an infected person chasing him from behind. Ing, head there immediately. I ordered at once. There weren't many survivors left running around in Zone A. I thought they might have all been evacuated. Finally found someone. I don't know if we'll make it in time. Shiyu senses the remaining person's mental state is very unstable. The situation is probably extremely critical, and the infected is closing in fast. Speed up, I said. Bang, bang. A young soldier with a youthful face turned and fired 2 more shots. One bullet hit the infected in the stomach, but it only paused for a moment before continuing its charge. The young soldier's face was deathly pale. They had been careful, but were still ambushed. His comrade had died on the spot, and now it was his turn to fall. These infected were even more sensitive to the living than zombies. But if he couldn't find reinforcements, their sacrifice would be meaningless. Right at that moment, a gunshot rang out. The young soldier jumped, watching as the infected charging at him suddenly collapsed, a bullet hole in its forehead, blood pouring from the back of its head and pooling on the ground. Virum. The sound of a vehicle engine came from behind. The young soldier turned around, both overjoyed and surprised. Before him wasn't his comrades, but a minibus. But having someone arrive was good enough. The vehicle stopped. I looked at the corpse and immediately noticed countless thin parasites wriggling in the pool of blood, so dense it made my skin crawl. May I ask who you are? The young soldier stood at attention, giving a military salute, and asked. At this moment, Li Yusin rolled down the window, asking anxiously, where are the scientists right now? Professor Su Guangkai and Su Tong, do you know them? The young soldier froze. What a coincidence. Our squad is protecting several scientists, including the 2 Professors Su. I was sent out to find reinforcements, he quickly replied. Really? Li Yusin was overjoyed. Are they okay? They're fine for now, but the situation is deteriorating very fast. The number of infected is increasing, and there are still many survivors who have no combat ability but are extremely important, so we're at a disadvantage. They've also been scattered. The young soldier shook his head. The military has deployed forces into Zone A, but to prevent the spread, locking down this area has consumed too much manpower. To clear it out completely, they need time. But without enough ammo, how are they supposed to hold out? Brother Jiang. Hearing that her grandfather and mother were still safe, Li Yusin breathed a sigh of relief, but the young soldier's words also made her realize the situation was very tense. She could only turn to look at me. I signaled Ing to open the door, then said, take us to them. Yes, sir. The young soldier immediately got on the bus. With someone leading the way, the minibus quickly sped toward the building where Professor Su and the others were hiding. Inside the building, everyone waited anxiously. They followed the squad leader's orders, not making a single sound, quietly hiding in the room with the curtains drawn tight. But in that terrifyingly silent atmosphere, the sound of their own breathing and heartbeats, along with those around them, seemed magnified, making it even harder for anyone to stay calm. Director Lee was the most restless, unable to sit still. Being stuck in a room without knowing what was happening outside was no different from waiting to die. The 2 soldiers hadn't been gone long, but the wait felt like a lifetime. Su Tong sat next to Su Guangkai, both of them silent. Right at that moment, the terrifying silence was broken by the sound of an engine approaching from afar, followed by the urgent screech of tires braking right outside the door. Everyone instantly snapped out of their tense state. Director Lee was the first to jump up, his face full of excitement that someone had arrived. That fast, the squad leader was surprised. Actually, they were only temporarily trapped, and others might be trapped elsewhere too. so he completely didn't expect reinforcements to arrive this quickly. Director Lee excitedly ran straight to the door. When the door opened, the soldier who had been sent for help had returned, leading a few people standing outside. Leading them was a young man, followed by a petite, cold girl, and a beautiful girl with a gentle aura. Director Lee immediately spoke up eagerly, telling them to get him out of here quickly, asking where Zhang Gaohe was. Why didn't he come himself? Then he continuously demanded to be taken to Zhang Gaohe, or to just leave this damn place directly. The young man in front had an unknown background, but his gaze was deep, his waist loaded with weapons, and the sniper rifle on his back exuded an icy, lethal aura. The petite girl behind him also carried a cold, murderous intent. Just a glance from her made people feel like their throats were being targeted. Seeing this group appear, Director Lee naturally assumed they were Zhang Gao's people. Otherwise, how could they have gotten here? But after he finished his rant, both Ying and I were dumbfounded. Who the hell is this guy? I didn't even bother paying attention to him, because right at that moment, Li Yusin bypassed Director Lee and walked straight inside. Grandpa, Yusin cried out the moment she saw Su Guangkai and Su Tong. The two of them were stunned. They had just been worrying about her, yet here she was, appearing right at the most critical moment. Director Lee stood there dumbfounded. No matter how slow he was, he finally realized that our group didn't belong to Zhang Gaohe. We were here to save Su Guangkai and Su Tong. With his brother-in-law as the captain of the security team, Director Lee had always assumed he would be the first one rescued. He never expected it to be Su Guangkai. I spoke up, telling Yusin that this place wasn't safe and we needed to leave immediately. For scientists like Su Guangkai, this place was simply too dangerous. At this point, the squad leader walked over and asked about our identities, wondering if we were a survivor team. He was a paranormal and could clearly sense the powerful energy radiating from the little girl. Moreover, there were other unusual energy signatures coming from the minibus outside. As for me, even though I didn't emit any special energy, the sniper rifle on my back was enough to make him wary. I clearly stated my name was Jiang Lushi. The squad leader earnestly requested my help. There were still many scientists here, and he asked if I could escort them out as well, saying they just needed to drive behind us. The young soldier had only brought back a survivor team like ours. They couldn't afford to keep waiting for reinforcements that might never arrive. I glanced inside and nodded in agreement. I had always respected scientists, and since the squad leader had asked, I had no reason to refuse. Su Guangkai, Su Tong, and the other experts and professors were visibly overjoyed. Director Lee, standing nearby, couldn't hide his delight either. Even though he was just an administrator at the research institute, he still believed his importance was on par with the scientists. But right after, I added that I still had to go somewhere else. They could either follow me or stay here and wait for me to return to escort them out. The squad leader was stunned and asked where I was going. I gave a brief answer: the hospital. I still had to go there to get the serum and wake up Zhu Ying. The squad leader was shocked, because going to the hospital right now was no different from seeking death. But I didn't explain further. If I didn't go now, once the military took control of the situation, it would be extremely difficult for me to get the serum. The smile that had just bloomed on Director Lee's face instantly vanished. He didn't believe I would come back, and even if I did, who knew how long it would take? Not to mention, the hospital was ground zero for the outbreak. Right then, Su Tong spoke up, saying that in that case, we should go to the hospital first. She didn't know my reasons, but she still chose to trust me. Director Lee finally couldn't hold back anymore and loudly objected. He even brought up his status as Zhang Gaohe's brother-in-law, promising a reward if I took them to him. This time, I looked him dead in the eye and made it clear. I already told you. If you think it's dangerous, stay here and wait for me to come back. Director Lee was instantly rendered speechless. I treated his status and the reward he just mentioned as if I hadn't heard a word. That sheer indifference left him utterly flustered. Director Lee stood there in a daze. Naturally, I didn't say another word to him. I just walked over to support Su Guangkai and invited him into the vehicle. During my previous venture into the beast nest, Su Guangkai's notebook had helped me a lot. He nodded repeatedly, smiling in response. The other experts and professors looked at the father-daughter duo, Su Guangkai and Su Tong, in a completely different light. After all, they were benefiting from their connection. Otherwise, who would dare risk their lives to charge into Area A to save people during such a critical crisis? Su Guangkai and Su Tong got onto the minibus, while the two soldiers found two other vehicles and drove them over, parking nearby. The squad leader told the experts and professors to get in, saying his men would follow behind. I didn't say anything else. Space in the minibus was limited, and cramming more people in would be incredibly uncomfortable. Besides, Zhu was still sleeping. I didn't want the vehicle to be too crowded right now. On the other hand, those soldiers didn't seem to fully trust me yet. If I offered proactively, they might not agree, and the experts themselves might not want to get in my vehicle anyway. Seeing everyone actually preparing to leave, Director Lee was fuming with anger and resentment. From start to finish, no one paid him any mind. Everything he said was completely ignored. But he didn't dare stay behind alone, so he sullenly followed the group into the vehicle. Sitting in the car, he muttered complaints, saying that going to the hospital was playing with their lives. He even threatened that once he saw Zhang Gaoha, he would definitely file a complaint against us. He directed these words at the soldiers in the car, because he couldn't boss me around and could only vent his frustration on them. The two soldiers in the front seats glanced at him. The one in the passenger seat was the very soldier I had saved earlier. He glared, angrily retorting that Director Lee had no right to complain. He pointed out that they were nearly out of ammo, and staying put would have been truly irresponsible. Furthermore, a comrade had just sacrificed his life right outside, and his body was still lying there. Director Lee's incessant whining had tested the soldiers' patience for far too long, and now they simply couldn't take it anymore. Director Lee never expected a young soldier to dare talk back to him. Though the soldier was young, his face was flushed with anger. That furious glare made Director Lee, a man who had never even killed a chicken, feel a pang of guilt and fear. He stammered, arguing that protecting them was the soldier's duty. The young soldier instantly flared up, jumping up as if to lunge at him. Director Lee turned pale and shrank back in terror, but the soldier driving quickly pulled his comrade back. Finally, Director Lee cowered in the corner of the car, not daring to utter another word. Even though the looks the experts and professors gave him made him feel both angry and humiliated, he secretly gritted his teeth, thinking they were all in on it together. By now, the minibus had started up, heading straight for the hospital. After arriving at the Heiyuan safety zone, Su Guangkai had been scheduled for a health checkup at the hospital and had a dedicated doctor. So he was very familiar with the route and gave us direct directions. Su Tong looked at Zhu lying on the bed and asked if she was the reason I was so determined to go to the hospital. Zhu looked like she was fast asleep, but in this situation, that sleep was clearly abnormal. Moreover, my insistence on going to the hospital was enough to make anyone suspicious. I frankly admitted that I had heard the Heiyuan safety zone had developed a type of serum. It was meant for level 2 paranormals undergoing evolution, and Zhu was currently in that exact stage. With Su Guangkai and Su Tong, I didn't need to hide anything. They might even have more information. Sure enough, Su Tong nodded, confirming the serum existed. Even though it wasn't their project, she had heard of it. That serum could stimulate the mutated cells of level 2 paranormals and accelerate their evolution. However, the extraction process was extremely difficult, and the quantity was so scarce that it couldn't be mass-produced. I nodded. The fact that it couldn't be widely distributed was within my expectations. Just getting my hands on it would be lucky enough. From evolutionary crystals to serums, the achievement scientists had made post-apocalypse brought immense benefits to paranormals. Even the fact that the safety zone could currently provide vegetables and rice was thanks to their efforts. I believe that in the future, even more research would be perfected. My biological laboratory and the alien plant cultivation facilities would also gradually unlock new functions. In the past, I had picked up a scientist's notebook that was filled with pessimism about the world's future. But right now, I felt that even in the apocalypse, hope still existed. At least for me, the Starseed and the mobile construction vehicle were my hope. They were my guarantee to keep surviving in this world. The three vehicles sped down the road. The roaring engines quickly attracted a few infected. Not only that, but from the surrounding buildings and dark alleys, more and more infected poured out. Appearing from all directions, their bloodshot eyes locked onto the three moving vehicles. I told everyone to ignore them and just get to the hospital first, because opening fire now would only attract more infected. The minibus in the lead didn't slow down at all, charging straight ahead. The two vehicles behind immediately hit the gas to keep up. Over a dozen infected snarled and lunged at us. One of them got close and slammed into the side of the vehicle with a screeching thud, its hideous face pressed against the glass as if trying to bore its gaze inside. Director Lee let out a miserable shriek, and the other experts and professors also turned pale with fear. I quietly observed the infected. Their eyes were completely hollow, vastly different from zombies, which still retained primal cravings. These people, after being taken over by the parasites, had become literal puppets. The distance from Area A to the hospital wasn't far, but crossing through this sea of infected right now was no different from walking through hell. If it were a normal paranormal team, they would definitely have to sneak around step by step. But with my MCV and two military vehicles driving on the main road, hiding was impossible. As a result, the number of infected swarming us grew by the second. They surrounded us completely, constantly leaping and slamming into the vehicles, making even the heavy military cars shake violently as if they were about to flip. Suddenly, a loud crash rang out. An infected jumped from a high-rise building and smashed straight into a windshield. The force of the fall combined with the vehicle's speed made for a devastating impact. Its body was pulverized, and the bulletproof windshield shattered into pieces. Panicked screams echoed inside the car. The soldier driving quickly steadied the wheel, swerving to throw the mangled flesh off. But losing the windshield meant the gates of hell had opened. 7 infected lunged in like starving wolves. Director Lee wasn't in that car. Amidst his sheer terror, a spark of secret joy ignited as he thought the vehicle behind them would serve as bait for their escape. He trembled, muttering that he had warned them, that they were all going to die. He even consoled himself with the thought that if that car was destroyed, the horde of infected would be drawn away. But suddenly, a barrage of rapid gunfire erupted. The infected at the front of the car were blown to pieces, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. Startled, Director Lee turned his head and saw me standing at the rear window of the minibus, dual-wielding Type 95 assault rifles, unleashing a hail of bullets with terrifying precision. Wielding automatic rifles like handguns, standing in a violently bouncing vehicle, and still hitting targets on another moving car. The sight was beyond imagination. The gunfire continued, and 7 or 8 more infected dropped dead. Even the soldiers driving were dumbfounded. I yelled at them to stop spacing out, clear the corpses off the hood, and swap places with the car in front, maintaining a 3-meter distance. Such a short distance would prevent the infected from squeezing in between. With the minibus shielding them from the front, the rear car would be safe even without a windshield. But that required incredibly high driving skills. A veteran soldier used his rifle but to sweep the bodies away while asking Eru if he could do it. The young soldier just gave a firm nod, slamming the gas to stick close to my vehicle. Seeing this, Director Lee panicked. He knew full well that sticking close to me was the safest option, so he hurriedly urged his driver not to let them pass. But the soldier simply steered aside in silence, yielding the way. Director Lee was shaking with rage but didn't dare make any more threats. He was filled with endless regret, wishing he had gotten into my vehicle earlier. Throughout the journey, he clearly saw my minibus leading the way, facing more infected than the 2 military vehicles combined. But every time my minibus plowed through, the infected were sent flying like bowling pins. I even had enough leeway to provide cover fire for the cars behind. This MCV was truly terrifying. The continuous gunfire only attracted more and more infected. They swarmed in, forming a dense black sea of bodies that tightly encircled the convoy. Their numbers were even more horrifying than a regular zombie horde. Clearly, the infected sensitivity to humans and sound far exceeded that of zombies. Looking at the horde ahead, I couldn't help but frown. No matter how strong we were, we couldn't kill them all. Moreover, the infection rate of this parasite was simply too terrifying. Fortunately, Area A had been locked down. Otherwise, the entire safety zone would have been wiped out sooner or later. Just then, Ing spoke up, telling me to look ahead. Through the layer of blood and flesh plastered across the windshield, I saw a high-rise building come into view, bearing a prominent red cross symbol. The hospital. We had finally arrived. Amidst the ever-growing sea of infected, The journey just now had been nothing short of a desperate escape from hell. Now, even if it was just a faint light in the darkness, the hospital symbol became the sole ray of hope for everyone still alive in the vehicles. My MCV didn't slow down at all, continuing to plow straight through rows of infected. They were sent flying like meat dolls, leaving long, mottled streaks of blood on the road. But I wasn't the only one under pressure. The two military vehicles behind were constantly swarmed. The infected leaped onto the cars, attacking in a frenzy. The soldiers inside had to fire continuously to maintain formation, but there were too many enemies, and their ammunition wasn't infinite. I glanced toward the hospital, my mind rapidly calculating a safe approach. Right now, the top priority was getting the serum and keeping everyone alive. Entering the hospital, which was very likely ground zero for the outbreak, was definitely not going to be easy. I told everyone we had to move fast, grab the serum, and get out before things got worse. At the same time, I told Ing to get ready. She replied immediately, her eyes sharp and focused. Right then, a massive explosion echoed from behind, violently shaking the entire convoy. I turned my head and saw an infected plunge from above, slamming hard into the roof of the rear military vehicle. The soldiers panicked but reacted swiftly, immediately gunning it down and continuing to drive forward. I shouted, ordering them not to stop. The closer we got to the hospital, the greater the number of infected and the higher the danger. But this was our only objective right now. There was no turning back. Haiyuan Hospital. Before the apocalypse, it was the #1 people's hospital of Sanxiang Province, one of the top hospitals in the central region. Behind it was the prestigious Human Disease Gene Research Center, where long lines of people would queue up for checkups from early morning every day. Even so, ordinary people could only hope to see a department head. Meeting top-tier experts was practically impossible. Before the apocalypse, this hospital still tried to provide some medical services to the general public. But after the apocalypse, it had completely become a private hospital for the privileged class. The shortage of medicine and doctors meant that if ordinary people got sick, they could only wait to die. After all, if they didn't even have food to eat, where would they get medicine? And even before the apocalypse, the poor could hardly afford medical bills. When the Haiyuan Safety Zone was established and biochemical science rapidly advanced in the post-apocalyptic era, this hospital became the Safety Zone's crucial biochemical research lab. Many elite experts and doctors were gathered here, all of them precious assets to the government. Not to mention, the laboratories housed countless first-hand research documents and extremely valuable serum samples. This time, the outbreak had erupted too quickly. Even paranormals were getting infected. If it spread through the military, the consequences would be unimaginable. The entire safety zone was at risk of collapse. Forced by the circumstances, the main forces had to retreat urgently, unable to escort the experts and research materials in time. But they couldn't just abandon them either. Right when the outbreak occurred, Commander Peng Dinglong of the Xiangwu military base happened to be in Area A, and he personally led a special forces team into the hospital for a rescue mission. But by the time the special forces arrived, they were trapped. They had underestimated the speed of the infection's spread and the sheer number of infected. Ever since they entered the hospital, the number of infected had skyrocketed. Furthermore, all communication signals had been completely cut off. This left Peng Dinglong unable to call for backup, and he had no idea what the situation was like for the main army outside. The pressure grew heavier by the day, threatening to turn the Haiyuan safety zone into a second apocalyptic disaster. An officer reported that they still had some ammunition and rations left and could hold out a bit longer, but the most critical issue was the lack of drinking water. The Haiyuan safety zone did have a water filtration system, but the limited tap water was only supplied to high-ranking officials, the military, and certain research institutes. Haiyuan Hospital used to have tap water, but ever since the outbreak, no one dared to drink it anymore. Not long ago, the special forces had brought an infected corpse into the hospital for research. The experts quickly determined the cause: a mutated parasite with extreme vitality and terrifying infectious capabilities. It could reproduce outside a host, and its eggs had very likely contaminated the water supply. Because of this, no one dared risk drinking the tap water. After hearing the report, Peng Dinglong coldly ordered his subordinate to step down. The soldiers saluted and left. Standing beside him was his trusted subordinate, Zhang Gaohe, who asked with a face full of worry what they should do next. If they were just retreating, the soldiers could still risk their lives to break out. But if they had to bring along the scientists and precious lab equipment, it was practically impossible. Peng Dinglong shook his head. Their objective this time was precisely to save the scientists and, ideally, preserve the research equipment as well. If they just retreated and abandoned them, the sacrifices of so many soldiers would be rendered meaningless. He ordered in a deep voice to hold the line for a few more days, demanding the experts urgently research a way to purify the water and destroy the parasite eggs. Because if even a single egg was left behind, the consequences would be catastrophic. Just as he finished speaking, gunfire erupted outside the window, followed by a massive explosion that sounded like a grenade. Peng Dinglong instantly flew into a rage, bellowing to ask who dared to open fire and throw grenades. That kind of action would only draw hundreds, if not thousands, of infected. Once they swarmed into the hospital, everyone would be wiped out. Zhang Gaohe said he would go check. Over the past few days, he had bottled up so much anger that he just wanted to shoot whoever was disobeying orders. But the moment he looked out the window, Zhang Gaohe was stunned. Before his eyes was a sea of infected, at least thousands of them, madly chasing and attacking a small convoy. He cursed under his breath, thinking they were absolutely insane. Driving right into the middle of an infected horde, shooting and throwing grenades on top of that. It was no different from seeking death. But right after, he realized something even more horrifying. That convoy was heading straight for the hospital and was about to crash into the gates. Zhang Gaohe roared in anger, thinking that if they wanted to die, they were dragging the entire hospital down with them. If the convoy smashed through the gates, the horde of infected behind them would flood in. Once they breached the perimeter, there was no way they could hold them off. At this moment, Peng Dinglong also stepped up to the window. Seeing the scene with his own eyes, his entire body tensed to the extreme. His gaze landed on the lead vehicle, and a sudden sense of familiarity welled up inside him. That vehicle, it was Jiang Liushir's. He muttered my name, while Zhang Gaohe yelled in panic that it was the guy they had investigated before, accusing me of trying to get them all killed. But immediately after, he also noticed something unusual. Driving through a sea of infected like that was tantamount to suicide. Yet my vehicle was charging straight into the horde like a war chariot, crushing everything in its path, and had survived up until now. Zhang Gaohe couldn't hide his shock as he asked if my vehicle was really that powerful. The more Peng Dinglong looked, the more astounded he became. My vehicle was completely different from the intel he had gathered. The front was equipped with sharp V-shaped ramming spikes. Every charge sliced the infected in half or tore them to shreds. Seeing me getting closer and closer to the hospital, Zhang Gaohe anxiously asked what they should do. Peng Dinglong immediately ordered the gates opened. Zhang Gaohe turned pale, worried that opening the gates would let the infected flood in. But Peng Dinglong tensely retorted that if they didn't open them, I would smash right through, and the consequences would be even worse. In this situation, there was no other choice. A series of loud clatters rang out. The soldiers guarding behind the hospital gates quickly cleared the barricades and threw the gates open, all their gun barrels aimed straight outside. The infected outside were just waiting for this minibus to enter so they could swarm in after it. In the last vehicle of the convoy, Director Li was trembling uncontrollably. Sitting right by the window amidst the surrounding infected, he flinched violently every time one of them slammed into the car. The hospital gates opening didn't put him at ease. On the contrary, it terrified him even more, because once they were inside, they could very well be cornered to death. It wasn't just him. Even the soldiers guarding the gates were under immense pressure as they watched thousands of infected charging toward them. Because whether they were regular soldiers or paranormals, just a single touch meant infection and certain death. Just when everyone thought I was going to plow straight through the hospital gates, the tires suddenly screeched piercingly against the asphalt. My MCV didn't charge into the gates. Instead, it swerved sharply, crashing straight into the dilapidated building next door. Not only were the hospital guards stunned, but even the soldiers in the two military vehicles behind me were dumbfounded. They almost thought I had lost control of the wheel. Crashing into a building at nearly 100 kilometers per hour meant certain death. A terrifying boom echoed out as the cement brick wall was smashed to pieces. With its massive weight and speed, the heavy MCV delivered a blow the building simply couldn't withstand. Right at that moment, Ren Shiyu's telepathic voice rang out in the minds of the soldiers driving the military vehicles, ordering them to keep driving. They only hesitated for a split second before gunning it straight for the hospital gates. There was no time to think. The young soldier I had saved earlier looked back anxiously. After crashing into the building, I had drawn the vast majority of the infected to change direction and chase after me. From the very beginning, my MCV had been their biggest target. A stream of data instantly flashed through my mind, reporting that the ramming spikes, windshield, and alloy armor had all sustained varying degrees of damage. Relying on the impact force and the front ramming spikes, the MCV smashed through 3 consecutive walls of the dilapidated cement brick building. Immediately after, the ramming spikes retracted, revealing a pitch-black cannon barrel. I had charged the air cannon's energy to its absolute maximum right before crashing in. Without hesitation, I fired at full power. A supersonic blast of air erupted in the confined space, blowing the second floor apart and sending walls collapsing with a deafening rumble. I immediately ordered all engines to start and activated the MCV's second form. Amidst ear-piercing grinding noises, the cabin elevated, and the MCV evolved into its mining truck form. A colossal 160-ton block of steel materialized inside the old building. Its height exceeded the structure's limits, directly smashing through the support beams and floors. Outside, the soldiers in the military vehicles were going crazy with worry, having no idea what I was doing. Because in this situation, even if I didn't die from the crash, I would be trapped inside the building and torn to shreds by the infected. But they couldn't stop. They could only rush into the hospital and find another way to save me. The rapid fire of automatic rifles and heavy machine guns roared, shredding the front lines of the infected. But these things were even more terrifying than zombies. A zombie would die if its head was destroyed, but these creatures kept charging even with their heads blown off. Even with broken legs, they could crawl rapidly using their hands. The parasite was their true brain, controlling their muscles and nerves, causing their bodies to twitch for a long time even after being torn apart. The defensive line was quickly pushed to its limit. Soldiers continuously shouted reports that they couldn't hold on much longer, and that was with me drawing away the vast majority of the infected. Peng Dinglong was furious. Opening the gates was meant to let me and the 2 military vehicles in, yet I had crashed into a building, dragging out the time. Zhang Gaohe grabbed the walkie-talkie, intending to order the gates closed immediately. The priority now was preserving their forces, and I probably couldn't make it out anyway. But right at that moment, the old building shook violently like an earthquake. Massive chunks of the walls peeled off, crashing heavily to the ground. Both Zhang Gaohe and Peng Dinglong were stunned, barely able to believe their eyes. Inside the building, my mining truck knocked down pillars like it was crushing toy blocks. The second floor was riddled with holes and shaking violently. By now, I had swapped places with Ing and taken the driver's seat. Both hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my mind highly focused. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The massive wheels crushed the staircase. Under that terrifying power, the mining truck smashed through the first floor ceiling and surged straight onto the second floor. Ahead was a collapsed balcony. I instantly yanked the steering wheel, maneuvering the 160-ton mining truck into a sweeping drift amidst the rubble. Bang, bang, bang. I snapped the last 3 pillars, and the mining truck burst straight out of the building. While still suspended in midair, I immediately reverted the MCV to its original form, transforming it from a mining truck back into a minibus. The moment the minibus launched into the air, the dilapidated building behind it completely collapsed. A deafening rumble echoed out. Countless infected were crushed beneath thousands of tons of brick and stone, screaming miserably before being buried alive. The rubble formed a massive wall that blocked the 8-lane road, leaving only a narrow gap barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through. In the blink of an eye, the tide of infected was cut in half, and the pressure at the hospital gates dropped significantly. The soldiers standing guard watched the scene in absolute stunned silence. They had seen me drive straight into the building with their own eyes and thought I was dead. Who would have expected the result to be an entire building leveled to the ground? After the MCV disappeared inside, They only saw the building shake violently and collapse. No one could even imagine what I had done in there. A minibus, no matter how advanced, was just a toy compared to a building, yet it had managed to bring down the entire structure. It sounded like a damn missile. I heard Zhang Gao muttering, unable to believe his own eyes. Previously, in his mind, I was just a survivor leading a small team. But now, the power of this vehicle had far exceeded all his speculations. Peng Dinglong quickly barked orders over the walkie-talkie, commanding all soldiers to press the attack. The dazed soldiers instantly snapped back to reality, their morale surging to unprecedented heights. Curses and battle cries rang out. Heavy machine guns were hauled out of the trenches, unleashing a frantic hail of fire upon the infected. After 2 days of being suppressed, not daring to shoot, not daring to make a sound, all their pent-up rage was finally unleashed. On one side, the soldiers' morale was skyrocketing. On the other, the infected were crushed beneath the rubble. The advantage quickly shifted entirely to the hospital's defenders. Zhang Gaohe was just about to order the gates closed when Peng Dinglong immediately stopped him, ordering them to keep firing hard. The main road had been blocked by the collapsed building, drastically slowing the infected's advance. This was the perfect opportunity to counterattack. If they missed it, they could only wait to die. Right then, my MCV tore through like a rabid beast, charging straight through the remaining infected and entering the hospital gates. I slammed on the brakes, executing a 180-degree drift, and parked right behind the defensive line. The minibus bore a cold, high-tech appearance. Its front was caked in blood, its body covered in dust and shattered bits of bone and flesh, and its sharp ramming spikes gleamed with a chilling, eerie light. The soldiers who saw it went wide-eyed. Not even a tank gave off such an oppressive aura. The body was covered in scratches, and the windshield had cracks, but nothing was completely destroyed. The vehicle was practically intact. While the soldiers were still in shock, the infected had already begun climbing over the rubble. I simply pressed a button. The air cannon extended from the ramming spikes and fired. A heavy boom resonated. The shockwave blew away all the infected that had just crossed the barricade, scattering them like scraps of paper in a hurricane. I could clearly feel Zhang Gaohe's terrified gaze glued to the vehicle. He understood perfectly well that in the history of military weaponry, a vehicle like this had never existed. Whether it was the materials or the weapons, it far surpassed current human comprehension. I handed control of the MCV back to Ying, while I climbed out the window, flipping myself up to stand firmly on the roof. In my hands were 2 Type 95 automatic rifles, safeties off. I immediately opened fire. 2 fierce streams of fire spewed from the barrels. Infected after infected had their limbs blown off, rolling in pools of blood before being trampled by their own kind. I didn't aim for the head, because they would keep charging even with their heads blown off. I shot to completely strip them of their mobility. The magazines quickly ran dry. I dropped one rifle, reloaded with one hand, and simultaneously kicked the other rifle up, slapping in a fresh mag in under 2 seconds. The firepower erupted once again. I stood alone on the roof, but the firepower I laid down was no different from 2 or 3 machine guns working together, because my accuracy far surpassed any shooter here. My marksmanship left the soldiers staring in awe. Not only was the MCV terrifying enough, but I myself made them shudder. I alone shouldered the brunt of the pressure at the hospital gates. Every infected that charged forward had its limbs blown off and collapsed. The 2 military vehicles that had just rushed in also stopped beside the minibus. The soldiers hopped out one by one, unloading their weapons into the infected at close range. They had been suppressed for far too long, breaking out in cold sweats multiple times while being surrounded. But now, it was finally time to strike back. The rapid gunfire mingled with battle cries, echoing throughout the area. A soldier opened the car door, inviting the professors and experts to step out. They hurried out one by one. The thick stench of blood and the bits of flesh clinging to the vehicles made their faces turn pale. Their limbs trembled so much they had to support each other just to stand. Director Lee also got out, but this time he just stood quietly at the back of the crowd, not saying a word. As the experts were led behind the defensive line, I caught a glimpse of Director Lee stealthily pulling up his collar. A mix of despair, panic, and resentment flashed in his eyes. There was a wound on his neck. It must have been scratched when he was sitting by the window as the infected slammed into the car. He understood perfectly well that anyone injured by the infected would sooner or later turn and then be shot dead by the soldiers without hesitation. But he didn't want to die, so he planned to blend in with the experts to hide the truth. The slaughter lasted for nearly 10 minutes, until the gun barrels glowed red-hot. On the road, in the rubble in front of the hospital gates, the corpses of the infected were piled high. Severed arms and legs were still twitching, trying to crawl forward before being crushed. As the battle gradually died down, the soldiers finally relaxed from their state of extreme tension. They instantly felt bone-deep exhaustion, their arms so heavy they no longer felt like their own. Even veterans who had been through countless battles couldn't help but shudder at this bloody scene. Peng Dinglong clenched his fists. The exhaustion on his weathered face was mixed with exhilaration, because he knew they had truly just walked through the gates of hell. His gaze landed on me, unable to hide his admiration. I lowered my 2 rifles and jumped down from the roof of the minibus, noticing quite a few soldiers looking at me with burning, excited eyes. Whether it was the vehicle or the firepower, it all made them feel incredibly pumped and deeply satisfied. As Peng Dinglong walked over, I realized that his eyes no longer viewed me as an outsider, but as an equal, perhaps even someone worthy of respect. He strode up to me, gave a crisp military salute, and said that this time, it was all thanks to me breaking the siege. Not only had I saved them, but I had also preserved the doctors and the hospital's precious medical equipment. I had noticed him early on as well, a man who, despite his age, walked with a steady gait and spoke with absolute decisiveness. Li Yusin poked her head out of the car and called out to him. Peng Dinglong looked at her, then over at Su Guangkai and Su Tong. He then turned back to me and said he hoped the team he sent to protect Yusin hadn't caused any trouble. Looking back now, his worries were truly unnecessary. I replied that it was just out of good intentions anyway. Peng Dinglong reached out to shake my hand, saying that no matter what, I was the great hero here, and this time, he no longer saw me as some greenhorn kid. In a corner, Director Li glared at me with resentful eyes, but quickly lowered his head to hide it. He looked at his slightly trembling hand, as if he was gradually losing control. In his heart, he screamed that he didn't want to die, pinning all the blame on me. He believed that if I hadn't insisted on coming to the hospital and leaving their car in the back, he wouldn't be in this situation. Just then, he saw Zhang Gaohe walking briskly toward Peng Dinglong, so he stealthily trailed behind him. Zhang Gaohe stepped up to me, his eyes complex, and greeted me, "Captain Jiang." I just shot him a glance and gave a slight nod. He surely remembered clearly how he had left me waiting in the snow for nearly 2 hours last time. If he wanted to rebuild our relationship now, I'm afraid it was far too late. I didn't care about those thoughts. I just told Peng Dinglong there was no need to mention merits. I came to the hospital for my own personal business. He asked what I needed, his tone very relaxed, clearly willing to accommodate me within his power. I said straight out that the hospital had a serum that helped level 2 paranormals evolve, and I hoped the relevant doctors could examine my sister. Peng Dinglong pondered for a moment, then nodded, turning to tell Zhang Gaohe to go call Dr. Wei and Dr. Chiao. Zhang Gaohe immediately acknowledged and headed upstairs. Director Li, lingering in the back, peeked around before hurriedly following him, calling out Gaohe's name in a low voice.